Okay, we had to just do a quick Zoom restart. So I'm just testing the audio again. Can everyone online hear us in the room?
Yes.
Great. Okay, well then I think we'll get started with our next section. So the next part of our agenda is that we want to go through the program for the event that we started a draft of when we first met. So in your binder, there is a tab called Program. And you'll see a couple of things in that tab. In addition to the detailed program, you'll see with the highlights on it. We also have a sheet that looks at the different speaker options. As Sarah mentioned, one of the things that we want to do by the end of this planning meeting is to have our speakers that we want to send invitations to finalized. So that's our goal. We'll want to work through. I know we identified some options at our first meeting, so we want to go through and revisit those and see if there's anyone that we can confirm that yes, that these are the people we're going to invite. And then we'll go through some of the other events, the evening events, kind of social things as well. So we'll go through in chronological order. And we will talk in more detail about the breakout sessions when we review the curriculum tomorrow. So right now we'll kind of just give a high level overview, the topic for each of the breakout sessions. And then tomorrow we can go in more depth of what each of those breakout sessions will include. All right, any questions before we get started or comments from anybody online? All right. So at the very beginning, on Sunday, the 26th, we'll have our registration for all participants over at the Hilton Garden Inn. And we have our regional leader support team as well as Claire will help out with registration for all the participants and make sure that they have everything they need. They will receive some materials. They'll receive a gift, and this will be their opportunity to ask any questions before we get started on where they should be and when. Anything you want to add, Renee?
Nothing to add other than it's kind of the first opportunity to meet somebody face to face. It'll be the first time many people will meet Lindsay Clark, maybe the first time that they meet Claire. So it's generally a very encouraging time. We will have interpretation at the registration table to help our participants go through any of the materials or questions that they have. And then I'm looking over at David and Dory. Your teams and the staff partners are welcome to join, but they're of course not necessary at that part. They can definitely take a break and do something on their own.
And then that evening, right now, we have scheduled a welcome reception also at the hotel property. And included in that reception are some significant appetizers. So we're treating this as sort of a light dinner. We know that a lot of our participants will have traveled a long way and might be very tired. So this gives them the opportunity to go back to their hotel room and rest or turn in for the evening. Or if someone really is interested in going out and having a more substantial dinner, they can do that as well. Now, one thing about this Sunday evening, we are exploring an alternate option to the welcome reception. We had talked about the potential of having an AKS induction ceremony on this evening. So our colleagues who work with the inductions are, I believe, have asked one person, I think. So we were looking at from the participants, was anyone eligible and has not been inducted yet? So it turns out there was one person who is on our participant list. And so right now, our colleagues are reaching out to that person and seeing if they would like to pursue this option. My understanding is that they have other options as well on how they could do their induction. I think regionally and maybe international convention are in the mix. And so that person will let us know. I think we had talked about maybe the end of November as a final kind of deadline to make the decision, right, David?
Yeah, no, they're following up. We've shared the deadline with our donor relations team, so hopefully we'll have an answer relatively soon.
And so if that participant would like to move forward with having an induction, this welcome reception will shift. So we will turn this into the induction ceremony along with a reception to go with it. But so we'll have to, at the end of the month, once we have our final answer, we'll work with the donor relations team on setting this up and making sure that everything is in place. So then that piece of the agenda will change.
Would the location change as well?
Potentially.
So I think as background, it's an opportunity to show some leadership by example from this regional leader. And also we're continuing to struggle with the backlog of AKS inductions given COVID and the challenges that has presented itself. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do this.
And what we had talked about was that this might be a great way to open the training, have this great example of someone who was very motivated to give to our foundation. A lot of the speeches are usually very exciting, very inspirational. And so we thought that this, having it the evening before the actual training starts would be a great way to kind of set up everything that we want to talk about. Because it really plays into a lot of other things that are covered in the training in the next couple of days. So as David mentioned, we will follow up with our donor relations team at the end of the month. So potentially in December or so, we'll update this group on what the decision was. Great, so then we move into Monday. Yep,
If it's going to be an AKS induction, will the time frame still be the same, or will it linger more into the night as a dinner?
yeah, that's a great question. I think if it does turn into more of a traditional induction ceremony, we would want to work with our meeting planner, Bethany, as well as donor relations to see how they want to frame it. Do they want to do a more traditional schedule that it could go extend into the evening? Or do they want to do something a little bit more truncated for this event?
I just want to make sure that they don't come in the morning dozing, because they've not slept well.
Oh, okay, that's a good point. Right, if the evening goes quite late or something.
Michelle, if there's just one person being inducted, it won't be very long. So it won't be a very long ceremony like we have when we have, like a couple weeks ago when we had 5 tracks and there are 8 to 10 people on each track and inducted. It won't be that long. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. We can definitely make sure to look at the timing of it so that it's not too late of an evening. And so then Monday morning, the participants will get breakfast every day at their hotel. So they'll take care of breakfast before they come over to One Rotary Center. And then we will be arranging a shuttle service from the Hilton Garden Inn to One Rotary Center every morning and in the evenings. As many of you know, the weather in the end of March in Evanston can be nice, but it also can be terrible. So we do want to have that shuttle available for in case of bad weather or just anyone who wants to take it in the morning. I know some people like that kind of brisk, invigorating walk, but we want to give everybody that choice. And then we go into our opening general session. So we have a couple of speeches planned here to really set the stage and set up the event for all the participants. We have the Rotary Foundation goals and inspiration. So we talked about having Barry Rassin give that, again, to really set up, what are we working towards, right? What are we all here for? We have these amazing goals for our foundation so that we can continue to do great work. So let's set that up right from the beginning so that it can really set the stage for the rest of the conversations. Then we had talked about having our moderator talk about the expectations for the event. So this is a little bit more practical of what can you expect over the next 2 days, really encouraging everyone to participate, right? They're only going to get, something out of it if they really put something into it. And, kind of talking about who's here, who's in the room, who's not in the room, and things like that. And then we talked about a specific speech on your role, talking about the EMGAs and the EPNCs, and reinforcing that teamwork, right? That you're here because you're incoming EPNCs and EMGAs, but you have other members of your team that aren't here, right? The continuing EMGAs and EPNCs. There's the RRFC and all kinds of other people at the regional and district levels that you're going to be working with. We know teamwork is important, so really setting that up. One of the potential speakers that we had discussed when we met a few months ago was having General Secretary John Huco give this speech from the perspective of, the leader of the Secretariat. He has a great perspective overall, right, on why these people are important. Why is Rotary investing time and money into your role? Because you're important, and really having him talk through that. But I wanted to kind of see, are there other ideas on this speech? Talking about the roles, the importance of the roles, why they're here. Chris?
I still really like the idea of having John present. I think because of his position, I think it would make the folks that are there for their training. I hate to call it training, but what do we call it? Seminar. To have him in the room, I think is very inspiring, considering he's, the CEO of our organization, and I think it would be impressive to that group. And I know that Barry really liked that idea too.
Great. Any other ideas or thoughts on this speaker?
We don't happen to have a participant who has been both EMGA and EPNC. That would be the only, that would be my only other thought, is if we had somebody who has been in both of the roles.
Yeah,
That
that's
could
a
speak to
good
that.
question. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't think we do. Christine, I see you shaking your head.
No, I don't think we do. Claire?
I said unless me, because I've done those
Isn't-
2 roles also, but I don't
Maria
know
Aren,
what else you have in the program for me, so.
Christine, did Maria Aren, who was she an EMGA ever?
No, she was another role.
Okay.
Yinka, you had just mentioned that you've been in both roles, right?
Yes, I have. I've been in both roles, but I don't know if there's something else you plan for an assistant moderator, yes.
Sure. I think we do have you listed as an option at another speech, but this is still flexible. So I think we can talk through if Yinka, you think that would be a good option to use your background and expertise, given that you do have the experience for both.
I like that idea a lot. I think I also like having John Hugo speak with the participants. So I wonder if as we look through, if we look at there's another opportunity to engage John. But maybe we put it as a tentative right now, Yinka and John both being considered for this. And as we go through, see what our other opportunities are.
Well, it looks like you have Yinka tentatively for general session 2, which is on teamwork. You could potentially flip Yinka and John could talk about teamwork.
Yeah, I think that's an option too. So as Sarah made a great point, let's write down Yinka as an option for your role as an EMGA and EPNC. And then as we go through, once we kind of go through the entire program, maybe we can revisit some of these open ones and see which one makes the most sense. And then the other open position in the general sessions is the presiders. So you'll see throughout that there's a presider that opens up each general session. That person usually does some welcome remarks and any sort of logistical or housekeeping items that need to happen. We often use the moderator and assistant moderator for presider roles, switching back and forth between the two. But I think we're open to discussion if there's other ideas on the presider roles for those general sessions.
I think it makes sense to me
Yeah.
to have the moderator and assistant moderator switch
Exactly.
back and forth.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly open to other thoughts too.
So
I,
for
I
this,
like that very much because it's easier for us if we have announcements or something shifts. We're working with the two of you on that. It's kind of a nice for a background aspect.
so I know, Chris, we have you as a speaker, I think in this first one and the last one. Does it make sense to have the assistant moderator be the presider when you're the speaker, or does it make sense to have you do both in those sessions? What do you think would be easier?
I would think if I'm speaking to have Yinka be the presider and vice versa. Does that work for you, Yinka? So you can kick us off on Monday morning?
Great, so we will add in Chris and Yinka throughout the program in the presider roles. And when Chris is addressing the participants, we'll have Yinka be the presider, and then we'll fill in Chris and the other ones.
I know we were virtual this year, but Julie and I did that and I
Mhm.
thought it worked out really well.
Mhm. Also a nice chance, I think, for the participants to hear from our leadership, those that were involved, in the planning of the event. Great. So then after our opening general session, we have a short transit period. And then we move into a breakout discussion session. So you can see here, we have the same session happening at the same time, but with different groups. So we'll have your role and responsibilities for all of the EMGA participants and your role and responsibilities for all of the EPNC participants. During our first planning meeting, we had talked about the importance of having this role session to start with, really to kind of set up the rest of the program. And that it was, we really wanted to have the two groups in their own groups for this one, so they could talk in more detail about the specifics of their role for the first session. And so after our breakout session, we have a break for everyone. And part of these breaks is really, we're also encouraging them to be networking with each other, to be chatting, some of that informal learning or, kind of downloading what they just talked about. This is their opportunity. And then, Yinka?
So we are planning that for the EMGAs, they will be in two groups. But for the EPNC, they will be in one room. Is that the idea?
One room. Yep. Yeah.
So is 15 in a room not too much?
Well, because the EMGAs will also have their staff partners, it's actually more than the 15. So because the staff partners are joining in, what did we say? There's like 9 maybe total. So that takes us
the number
to a
will
little
go
bit like closer to 25. That's why we split them into 2 rooms.
Okay.
Yep, that's a great point. If you notice on each of the discussion sessions, underneath room are listed language codes. So we are having interpretation in each of those. And so it does help a little bit to be able to split up some of those languages for logistical purposes.
And then another question, who will decide in which group the participants will be? So there will be more English, of course. So how will you divide them?
So what we typically do is place the language speakers first, and then we divide up the English speakers based on the number that we have. So for example, if in room 1 for EMGAs, we have a lot of language speakers and there might only be a few English speakers. We try to balance it so that they're roughly the same number, but the English speakers, we kind of flex and move around a little bit more.
That also will enhance the possibility to exchange ideas and so on. So don't be in one group and 2 days, but be flexible in shifting also. That would be.
Yep, that's a great point. That is a good reminder that we do try as much as possible to mix up the participants so they're not always in the same groupings. Because you're right, I think that there's a lot of value that can happen in these discussions, talking to different people from different regions and really learning from each other, sharing ideas and best practices, questions even, right? And so after the break in the morning, we have computer lab time. And so this is really an opportunity for the participants to look at their online resources and tools. So we know that there are quite a few reports that these groups have access to that can help them do their job. So this is really an opportunity for them to kind of look, play around with, answer some scenario questions based on the tools, to really try to get them familiar with some of these things and playing around with it. We'll have staff in the rooms that work with these reports regularly. So if the participants do have a question or get stuck somewhere, then they have a staff person that can come over and help them to find what they're looking for.
They're in separate rooms, is that correct? Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, the reports that they use, there's some overlap, but there are some differences. And so we wanted to be able to focus a little bit more on the specifics.
So will they be asked to bring their own tablet or laptop with them, or will there be, I think you still have computers in the lab too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we still have computers in the lab. We had discussed at the first planning meeting about encouraging participants to bring their own devices, so we didn't have to worry about logins, passwords. Sarah, I'm looking at you for the right wording of
Language,
language,
keyboard,
keyboards.
comfort with device. If they're used to an Apple, having them use a PC. So we thought that, exactly as Renee was saying, we would encourage them to bring a device that they use regularly if it's portable.
A laptop, Smyrna.
Right, not a tablet, because some of the reports in my Rotary don't work as well on tablets or any other devices that are not operating system, like computer based. So we will make sure that we tell them in the know before you go that it is not just a device, to bring their own laptop.
But as we mentioned, if someone doesn't want to or forgets their device, we will also have laptops for them that they can use during these sessions. And so after the computer lab time, we'll have lunch. And so all of our lunches are going to take place in the basement of One Rotary Center at our Cafe International. We'll have some kind of seating set up for the participants. And then you'll see right below the lunch time is the Rotary Initiatives Fair, and that's listed as optional. Rotary Initiatives Fair is essentially like a small scale exhibit where staff members from different groups in Rotary can set up a table and the participants can talk to them about something specific. We mentioned earlier, this is only 2 days. There's so much to know about our Rotary Foundation that there are some very specific things that didn't make it into the program and the curriculum. So this is an opportunity for them if one of the participants has a particular interest or need or something's going on in their region, let's say, peace centers, for an example, they want to talk to an expert about it, this is their chance to do it. So they can use part of their lunch period to talk to these different staff experts on the different, their different areas of expertise.
So would there be some kind of a listing of what these initiatives are so that they can choose upfront which one they want to go to? Would there be a list?
Yeah, we do a call out ahead of time for the different staff groups. So we should be able to advertise who's coming to the initiatives fair ahead of time. So we can talk more, Madeline and I can chat about where's the best place to list this. But yes, I think that's a great point, making sure that they know ahead of time which groups they can interact with. So we'll have to think about where that could live to make the most sense. And typically we have them just kind of set tables up sort of like this in that atrium area on the 3rd floor, that kind of open area, so that people can see them as they're moving to their lunch area. We'll also have some signage and some staff letting people know that this is where you can go for the initiatives fair. And then after our lunchtime break, we move into another general session. And this one is focused on teamwork. So we had a couple of topics here that we wanted to cover. The first one on building teams, and then teamwork best practices and success stories. So you can see here for the building teams, originally we had talked about the idea of having one of the participants or facilitators paired with one of our staff partners, kind of get both sides. Also reinforcing that relationship between the staff experts and the volunteers. So if you look at our speaker options, Lise, we had identified as being a good option for us from the EMGA side. And then we had talked a little bit about some staff partners or major gift officers. Carolyn's name had come up, Carolyn Ferguson, who's one of our major gift officers. She's not coming, okay. So I'm looking to my colleagues who work closely with our staff partners and major gift officers to see if there is another idea from the group that's coming.
So I think Peter Schnell is probably one of the most experienced and knowledgeable. They're all experienced and knowledgeable. But he might be one good option.
I think one of my questions was, did you want to have them speaking with their EMGA who is here? Because that's the challenge. These are all incoming EMGAs, so they can talk about their work with prior EMGAs, but not with the current people in the room. When it's worked better, or it's worked differently when we've had returning people come back so they can talk about how they've worked together. But if they're all incoming, they haven't worked together yet.
Who's
So,
your staff partner, Lise?
it was Peter.
And he'll be here? Well, that might be a great connection.
I was gonna say, Peter was also a consideration for the next one on the 4-step process. General session 3,
Oh,
just as awareness.
But yeah, we could shift that because if
I was
he
gonna say that
is
we could ship
a
that
good
one out.
I was
fit.
gonna
Yeah.
say, is there another staff partner that could talk well on the 4-step? Excuse me, the 4-step, probably any of them,
I know, yeah.
right?
And I know we're trying microphone that works.
More than 2
Oh.
on.
So I know we're looking for geographic as well as gender diversity, so something to keep in mind. I know we have Maria Merlina is quite good, certainly knows the 4-step process as well. But Dora, you might have somebody from your area as well.
Yeah, Celeste Herbert's coming and she she had been based in the territory down the south and now she's up in the New England area, so she'll be here. Celeste Herbert.
Great. So it sounds like we are leaning towards shifting Peter to this session so that he and Lise can talk about building teams and working together, that relationship of the staff and the member working together to achieve their goals. And then the next one was teamwork best practices and success stories. So this is where we had Yinka tentatively slotted in. And what we were looking for from this was someone who was experienced to share some ideas, some successes, some best practices on working together. So maybe a story about working with a fellow regional leader to, to get a major gift, or an event or something like that. So we wanted to pull from some of our experienced people, either facilitators, some of our moderators, to really give them some ideas, since, as we know, these are incoming only, the participants. So we're trying to be able to bring in some of that experience that they're missing a little bit because they're just starting their role.
I like the idea of having Yinka here. It just makes kind of great sense because you've served as in both roles. So you could talk about, working with teamwork with the staff partner. You could also talk district leaders, and then maybe leave John back on session 1. Especially since Yinka is going to be presiding over session 1 too.
And Yinka has a great, well-rounded perspective too, as a senior leader who worked with regional leaders in your region, right? Kind of all the different pieces.
Do we know if John will be in town that week?
We have not checked his schedule yet, I don't think,
Okay,
but we can do that.
okay.
Great, so for this session, we'll have Lise and Peter, and then Yinka. So then after that general session, we have a short transit time. And then we move into breakout rooms, and the discussion is focused on teamwork. And this breakout session is integrated. So all of the groups will be mixed together amongst the different rooms. We thought that this was one, beneficial for the conversation, but it physically demonstrates that they should be working together by having them mixed in. Sorry?
And then just to clarify, I know you said staff partners won't be at the table. That's fine. Will there be space in the rooms for them at least? Because I know sometimes there's not enough space for them to be in the room.
So there will be space in each of the rooms. I'm not sure if it will be enough space for all of them to be in every room, but for sure, at least 1 to 2 spaces per room are available. We'll have to look at the physical setup, how much space we have.
I'm interested why you're asking the question.
Because I'm trying to, well, 2 reasons. One, as a manager, I'm gonna have to tell them where to go if they can't be in that room. And also just to make sure that if there's content that's being presented, it's really important that they know what the discussion is in the room, so that they can have those good follow-up conversations with their EMJs afterwards. Questions come up.
I think it would be great to have them as observers in the room, if nothing else, like you said, just to hear the conversation, and there
And I-
could be follow-up questions that they could assist with too.
And I know there's not always space in the room. That's why I was asking
Right.
kind of about that.
So will we be floating around as observers to these various rooms? Okay.
Yeah, so we do, we're balancing a little bit, a couple of different things in the rooms. As Dory mentioned, we want to make sure that some of our staff experts have an opportunity to sit in and observe. We also get some requests from other members of philanthropy teams that want to sit in and observe. In addition to Claire or regional leader support, we have our moderators and then the learning and development staff to kind of check on the curriculum. So what we have done in the past is kind of set up a giant spreadsheet grid. And then Madeline will work on, based on the capacity in each room, how many observer chairs can we fit? We also want to make sure that we're being respectful of the pandemic. And in the past, we've sometimes kind of squished a bunch of people in together. Not everybody may be comfortable with that this time. So I'm just making sure that we've got a little bit of space between the observer chairs. And then we'll do kind of a big call out to all of the staff stakeholders and let them know that, you know, each room has X number of seats and ask people to sign up. So we'll certainly target David and Dory's team as a priority for those signups, as well as Renee's team, and then kind of fill in from there if we have more space.
And Michelle, just to clarify, for the general sessions, there'll be sufficient space in the 3rd floor auditorium.
Absolutely. So all of the staff stakeholders are welcome to join us for those general sessions to kind of hear the big kind of corporate messaging, because we have fewer space constraints there too. So then after our teamwork breakout session, we have a break. And then we move into our next breakout session. And that is managing change and overcoming obstacles. That again is with mixed rooms, both groups together. We identify that this is something that most Rotary leaders in any capacity have to deal with, but particularly those that are really trying to build trust and ask for a commitment to our foundation, knowing what is changing in the organization, how to deal with something that comes up that could be seen as negative by some donors, really how they can work on that together. And so then that is our last session for the day. We'll have a shuttle service back to the hotel in case anyone wants to stop by at the hotel. And then we have a group dinner. And I'm not sure if Bethany is still on the line with us.
Yes, I'm here. I'm still looking to narrow down a couple of choices, but yeah, we're looking for something a little bit more casual nearby and probably get a shuttle to that as well.
So this will be a group dinner. We're not planning any formal program or anything like that, any remarks. One, because we want it to feel a little bit more casual, but two, there is always the challenge of interpretation. And when we go off site to a different restaurant venue, that can get much harder. And so Bethany, as she mentioned, is exploring different options. We're in the space now where we're trying to figure out which restaurants in Evanston are still open, which made it through the pandemic, which have enough space for our event and things like that. So we will keep you updated as Bethany makes some decisions on our options.
And we want to encourage all participants to go to this group dinner, right? Rather than people going off on their own. So that will be, I can just see it sometimes a few people get together and want to go off their own way. And I think it's important to keep everybody together for networking and socializing and sharing ideas, et cetera.
Yeah, our biggest tool for that is we're going to tell them that this is their dinner and they wouldn't be reimbursed for anything else. So
I love that.
Yeah, also necessary since probably we'll have a food and beverage minimum to be met. So hoping to get everyone there.
But when it's in the program, everybody understands that it's a group dinner.
Well, you hope so.
Really? Okay, you have the experience, I hear it.
we could also use some language on here where we say group dinner isn't as exciting. We could come up with like a, something dinner out with the group or something, but do the all behind it as well. That might be another thing we do.
The presider remarks for that session could also, for that earlier in the day, could also reinforce that kind of framing it as this is an opportunity for networking. It's not just dinner. This is, a continuation of your discussions, so we can kind of frame it a little bit like that too.
Perfect.
Just to test, my general experience is that most people who speak Portuguese and Spanish and French tend to speak some English. Is that your experience also? Because if that is the case, then the way we promote it as a further networking opportunity would then matter. Because if people don't really understand each other, then it's a problem. It will be a dinner with nobody talking to each other. But my sense, I'm not sure of the Korean, but most people I've met who speak Portuguese, French, Spanish, also speak some English, at least enough to interact and communicate.
In the past, we've also opened this dinner up to staff partners and major gift officers based on their schedule. So that also, they are obviously fundraising professionals, they're not interpreters, but we have found that sometimes they can help a little bit bridge the conversation to kind of, give a little bit of a summary of what someone said. Because as David mentioned, we will have those matching language abilities amongst our staff group as well.
And so Peter speaks 6 languages. We'll just have him go from table to table.
So none of the interpreters would be at this group dinner. Okay.
We'll tell Peter that he gets to hire an assistant for the day to help him out. Great, so that takes us through day 1 of our program. So if we're looking at day 2 on Tuesday. Yep.
Before we go to day 2, while going through the workbook and the leader's guide, I know when we talk about teamwork, we focused on interacting with district leaders, we called it, just generally like that, club and district leaders, interacting with assistants and things like that. But I'm not sure. I think one of the major problems they've had is the district governors themselves. Do we want to put that as a separate emphasis, just like we've put with assistants, with staff partners, and do we want to put specifically district governors? I mean, a district governor designed the logo and an assistant public image coordinator saw it and said, Madam Governor, this is not brand compliant, and tried to explain and proposed a design based on her concept. She said, this will match. And she simply told her, go to hell. Go to hell. So I don't know whether it is at the coordinator's end we need to handle that, or at the governor's end. But something needs to happen there. I mean, we've seen two different types. I've seen a coordinator who said, no, I'm a PDG. If the governor needs me, he comes. I'm not going to him. Of course, we don't want coordinators like that. But we also don't want governors who say, sorry, I'm the governor, go to hell.
Yeah, so are you thinking specifically in the teamwork session or the managing change, overcoming obstacles? Teamwork? Okay, yeah. Let's make a note. So when we go through the curriculum tomorrow, we can see how potentially we could talk through that.
And I will add, Yinka, that for our global support seminar that we'll talk about on Wednesday and Thursday, there is more specific content around the brand for the Rotary Public Image Coordinators, and then in working with their assistant RPICs on that. So we can definitely address some of those tougher questions when it comes to branding with those RPICs in the other training. But I think you bring a good point here about working with those leaders and, how does an EMGA work with donors while still dealing with a struggling governor line? Yeah.
I gave that as a specific example. I'm aware of a case where there was a prospect. Normally with Rotary, I mean, you find somebody who knows somebody who can reach the person. And there was an agreement that, look, when this guy opens the door, bring in the EMGA to continue the rest of the work because he is trained to do so. But when that time came, the governor simply said, to hell with the EMGA, this is my district, and went there. And of course, he failed. He failed for the reasons we knew he was going to fail. We don't want such missed opportunities.
I think this is a very important point. We did talk a little bit about this at our planning meeting in August because Barry and Gordon and myself and the team, feel very strongly about trying to get all of these resources and information down to the club level. And we can't do that if we don't have the support of the district leaders. But we also talked about how important it is that there's some direction that comes from the director and the trustee in those geographic areas that emphasizes the role of the regional leader and promotes the regional leader to those districts, because I think that can make a big difference too. And I know that that's going to happen, or I was told that that's, that there will be with the incoming directors and the trustees that, there's discussion about that, right? About how important it is to elevate the regional leaders in your region.
We can also look at, I know we have some specific pieces about the 4-step process, and we have a demo we'll get to too. I'm just trying to think of other ways we could talk about the importance of, in Yinka's example, of bringing in people who really know what they're doing, right? The experts on the gifts, how to manage the giving, what are the opportunities and things like that. So maybe I'll make a note. Maybe we can talk more about that as well. David?
And just kind of looking through some opportunities. I know we have the donor-centric practices. It kind of speaks to the point about who might be the best volunteer to approach that individual. So it's a small point, but an important one.
Will there also be at the International Assembly, in the governor's elect sessions, some discussion about I know they have discussions about resources that will help them, and to really emphasize how important the regional leaders are as a resource for them, hitting it from that end too.
So regional leaders are definitely mentioned as resources, but not as heavily as GNTS and GETS. That's really where we spend most of our time talking about the coordinators, the regional leaders, partly because they're members of the training team. So they're literally in front of them and can stand up and talk to them about their specific job and how they can help them. They are mentioned though, as I said at IA, more in the context of a specific session. For example, public image talks, the public image coordinator can help you. Not a lot, but really what we have done over the last couple of years is tried to really focus on regional leaders at that regional training, since they can stand in front of them, get to know them a little bit better, and really hear from them. How can I help you, district governor-elect nominee?
Hopefully, all of the regional leaders are being included in GETS training. I know in some cases that hasn't happened. So fingers crossed that that's improving.
Yes, we are definitely doing what we can to promote that. As you all know, the EPNCs and EMGAs are optional members of the training team. The other regional leaders are specific members, partly because their job includes training. But yes, we know that we are trying to encourage a lot of conveners to invite EMGAs and EPNCs where appropriate, especially around the Institute, right? That's such a great place for them to meet and network and talk to the leaders attending the Institute. So we'll keep sending out that message.
One other quick point on this topic is we do have, as we all know, 2 different places that Barry is slated to speak in general sessions. Chris, as you mentioned a few moments ago, we know he feels strongly about teamwork, right? And helping people collaborate, and obviously in setting aspirational goals. So this could also be a message that we work into Barry's speaking points as he's working to encourage trustees to really leverage their team members to meet our foundation goals.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, I wonder if Mian, let's continue. Mian, is this a good time for you to say goodbye to us and we will share the recording with you? Are you sure? We know it's very, very late for you.
I'm good.
All right. We'll keep checking in with you because I think if you talk, it helps stay awake.
Okay, so are we ready to go into day 2? So our Tuesday morning, our first general session, we have tentatively titled Why and How We Give. And here's where we wanted to have a polio update. Of course, specifically the EPNCs work on polio, but we know that this is an important update for all of our members and leaders to know what's going on with polio. There have been, a few different changes in the last year or so regarding cases, and I know that the program itself will have some updates. So this is a great time to make sure everybody hears this message. We had talked about some options here for speakers. The John Germ, certainly given his long history with polio and his role, that he could be an option. Major donor participants, I think that was someone who had given to polio. Sort of an idea that we could have another aspect of it. What makes people continue to be motivated to give? We know that this is a challenge for anyone raising funds for polio eradication, is that depending on where you are, who you're talking to, people might think it's over, right? Why would I need to give? So having that example of someone who has given and why they gave, or kind of the angle of messaging, right? How do we talk about it? and to make sure that to overcome some of that donor fatigue. Any thoughts on the polio update? Kind of which direction we want to go?
I definitely would love to have John Germ there if he's available. It's kind of a no-brainer. Right, Claire? Do you agree?
I agree. We will have at IA, they will officially announce the extension of the Gates agreement, so he can follow up on that as well, through 2026.
Do we have a participant that will be there that's been a major donor to polio eradication that could speak? Or what about Ramesh?
We do. I cannot tell you who it is. My computer has crashed and has a blue screen currently, but I will be able to get that to you.
Ramesh could be a possible speaker too.
He is
He's a polio survivor. He's done a lot of fundraising and he's a great speaker.
It sounds like a great option, right? As we look at the two of them as potential, one or the other.
Yeah, and then I'll make a note too that Claire can look into if there's any other participants that have given to polio.
Chris, are you thinking Ramesh Ferris, the EPNC? Okay, that is attending.
And I'm not saying him instead of John. I was thinking both of them.
Okay.
So I was going to bring up that Lisa brought up this idea that we don't talk about the different options to give to. This is a 60-minute session. If we could do 15 minutes per speaker or look at doing a 10-minute on what you can give to at the foundation, that might be an opportunity to address the point that Lee's brought up.
Yeah, and we've done that in the past, kind of do
Yep.
all the different ways that you can designate a major gift because people don't always know you can do a major gift to polio
Yeah.
or to the endowment or to annual fund or all the designations.
The second speech is a little bit more involved. It's an overview as well as a demonstration. So that one might take a little bit more time. We can kind of map that out a little bit.
So even if that, are you thinking more than 30 minutes for the presentation and demonstration, Michelle?
I'm not sure we had mapped it out yet, minute by
Yeah.
minute. I just was calling that to our attention that it's not just a regular speech.
And I also think since this is an update, polio update, we're not necessarily talking about fundraising for polio per se. It's an update. This is the status. This is where we are. These are the things we need. I think it's better to have somebody well informed, like John, the IPPC chair, if he's available, somebody in that group, who is talking from knowledge, not just reading from a script. There's this element of believability when you deliver these things.
And I think, one of the things we had talked about incorporating into this speech, that John could do, or certainly someone else. But again, that why are we giving? Why are we giving in general to the Rotary Foundation, but specifically here polio, right? We talked a little bit before about some of the challenges that come with fundraising for polio eradication when in some parts of the world, they haven't seen, active cases of polio in decades. And so how do you make sure that people understand the importance of it and really kind of giving that why piece to it, as well as the actual updates on how are we doing? What are the logistics of, eradicating polio, things like that, case count.
Do I understand you correctly, Yinka, that you're saying it should be more like a storytelling?
Of course, I always like storytelling.
Exactly.
It's more believable.
So I'm hearing that we do want to explore two pieces to this speech, right? The update itself, where we can talk about anything new going on, the status of polio eradication, and then something more along the lines of either a donor or someone who can talk about the why, potentially incorporate a story to help people message why this is still an important cause to donate to. And it sounds like maybe Ramesh is an option for that second one.
He would definitely tell a good story. He's been a convention speaker. So I think he could tell he
Has
would give
anyone
us-
else heard him speak before? He's pretty impactful. And
Well,
he's got a great story.
Do we need both of them? I mean, I wonder in terms of, is it more about why people need to still give that polio, I don't know that we need a long presentation on the current status, right? There are cases. So we're not done with our work yet. And getting into the why. I'm thinking about, right, what's applicable to both audiences. I'm questioning, I guess, two speakers on polio in the general session.
Sarah, I think you make a good point, and an update could be provided in a communication outside of this training to all of EMGAs, all of EPNCs, whereas the storytelling could be the more impactful experience for everybody here in person. Not to add another communication, Smyrna. I'm not doing that to you.
Well, but there are regular communications that go out about polio, right? I mean, it's not, and I assume this group gets quite a few like they get regular information on polio. Certainly the EPNCs get regular updates. Is that true, Claire?
They do. I don't know that Ramesh is going to be ready to get the EPNCs and the EMGAs ready to give to polio, or why the logistical part of it, or I think he has a great story, but I don't know that he could replace John Germ as a speaker.
Yeah, I would say based on our limited time, I think we need one polio speaker, and I'm open to who it is.
Adding to that, the why is also important, because being an incoming EMGA, you have to understand why someone will give to the foundation. So yeah, it's dual. I understand, Chris, that you support John. Yeah, I understand.
So I support John also, but I'm trying to put another name in if you're looking for an alternative. And I'm thinking about Maria Irene. I mean, she's not just coming in as EPNZ. I mean, she's been involved in polio work for many years, as it were. And from a diversity point of view, perhaps to have the plenary speaker speaking another language may be interesting rather than just English. So a female speaking in French, and yeah.
Yeah, any thoughts about a Marie Iren? Claire?
She would be a great speaker. She's on the African Regional Polio Plus Committee. I may have it wrong. Regional Polio Plus Committee. She is still actively involved in polio. She was the National Polio Plus Chair for a very long time in Cote d'Ivoire. So she would be able to provide that update. And then even talking about why they still are giving vaccines in Africa, even though they have been certified polio free. So she would be a good option to give the polio update.
And as Yinka pointed out, this would be a great opportunity to explore having someone speak in another language. So how are we feeling? Are we ready to decide for our polio speaker?
I don't know, Marie, but I would defer to the group if you do, and you think, because I think from a diversity standpoint, that would be a nice fit.
Great. So it sounds like we are going with Marie Iren for this speech. And then the next topic in this session, the 4-step process overview. So this is where we had talked about in our first planning meeting, the benefit of having a brief overview of the 4-step process and sort of, why we use it, and then having an actual demonstration. So having people get up on stage and do a little bit of a mock solicitation to help people, kind of put them in the right direction of what we're looking for, what we're talking about when we're talking about this. And so here's where we had originally had Peter Schnell. I know we have moved him, and David and Dory had a couple of other options for us. Maria Molina, who is a staff partner based in Mexico. And then Celeste Herbert is in North America. So either of those options could work as far as the person that gives the overview and then introduces our demonstration. Any feelings on Maria or Celeste?
Unfortunately, I don't know them, so I'm blank in that one. No.
I mean, I'm blank also, but so long as it's one of the staff, that is okay for me, because there will be very few in the audience who will have what we call fundraising core competencies. So when you're talking about a process, it may make people listen if they think they have an expert in front of them than just somebody they think, okay, it's just one of us. That's my thought on that.
I don't know Celeste. I've heard her name though, because she's recently she's in zone 32 now, right? Yeah. So I've heard people talk about her, but I don't think I've met her.
Could they
Maybe
do
I
it
did meet her
together?
in Toronto. Was she in Toronto? Okay.
Sorry, Sarah, could you repeat that?
Could they work together? I mean, if this is going to be a longer presentation and you have a demonstration, you would need at least 2 people engaged, right, for the demonstration. So potentially if they were working together on this,
Yep,
they
we
could
do.
then,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm good.
Yep, that's a great point, Sarah. As part of the demonstration, we had listed that we wanted a staff partner involved to, I think, play the role of the staff partner in the solicitation. So yeah, whoever we choose for the overview, the other person maybe could do the demonstration piece, like be involved in it.
Or they could do it together. If I understood what Sarah was saying, that they could give the presentation together and then do the demonstration together.
So one of the staff partners would be role playing as an EMGA and the other one would play the staff partner role,
I mean, the donor.
the donor. Okay.
Yeah, so we have a couple of different roles in the demonstration. I know Mian, we had talked about playing a role in the demonstration. I think she has left us. But
So I
we'll-
was going to ask you, was she introducing this session or was she going to be one of the participants?
one of the participants.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Yeah, so we had talked about involving a staff partner and one of the participants and a facilitator potentially to kind of talk about the there's the donor, there's the member, there's the staff partner. And I guess potentially there could be someone else too, but those were, I think, the main roles we were looking at.
I hadn't realized there were so many positions. I apologize. So I must have missed that in the notes, but for the role play. So that's getting very complex. So
I think that's what we had done when we done the demonstration in the past, like in the breakout rooms, right? We have the person who is being solicited. We had either the EMGA and then the staff partner as trying to model, right? Like potentially who would be involved in this.
So would Anne's role sort of be like the narrator of what's going on?
Correct. She was
Oh.
gonna be in the role, yeah. I think Mian is still on. I saw her put up a thumbs up icon, so if Mian is available, yep. Put up a thumbs up icon.
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm not sure we had marked who was going to play what role. But just had started talking about some of the roles that could be involved in the demonstration. Mian, do you have any strong feelings on which role you would like to play? Are you gonna be the donor? Are you gonna be the person doing the soliciting?
I'd like to be the person doing the soliciting. If that's okay.
Sure.
Don't worry, man. We will not hold you to whatever you promise as a donor that day.
Mhm.
So then we'll need someone to do the role of the donor.
So would Mian be playing the role of an M-Polio Now coordinator? Or during this? Because that's her, I mean, that's what she's got experience at, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to do that and polio.
Because maybe I'm now a bit confused because the 4-step process is for the EMJs. Or correct me if I'm wrong. So the demonstration should be like a donor with an IAGA, EMGA.
So
I
the
think.
EMGAs are definitely going to get a more in-depth 4-step process breakout session.
Mhm.
What we had talked about before is that although we talk a lot about the 4-step process with EMGAs, it's actually a universal fund development concept. So even if you are a polio coordinator, right, and you're trying to solicit a major gift for polio, the concepts can apply to both groups. But yes, we do certainly talk about it a little bit more with EMGAs than we have with polio coordinators in the past. But I think that there are definitely principles that go with both groups.
And I think it's a great opportunity to emphasize it to both groups, because anybody who's involved in fundraising, this is an important concept to be familiar with.
And the EPNCs may end up being EMGAs down the road as well.
Thank you for clarifying this. I'm convinced that the EPNC can be as an example in this way as well.
It probably also could include that conversation of who's the right person to approach the donor. So as the EPNC, Mian could have the relationship with the donor that the EMGA does not, so that she would be the right person to make the request.
Well, and in the event that there's a potential major donor for polio, the EMGA would be possibly working together with the End Polio Now coordinator and the staff partner.
And also for me is that in many parts of the world, you actually don't have the luxury of these class separations. You know, I mean, if an EPNZ is based in Cairo and the EMGA is in Johannesburg, if you have a polio donor in Johannesburg, the EPNZ is not going to fly down from Cairo to Johannesburg to do it. So whoever is closer will step in and do that job. So if they all have the skills, the better. In fact, for me, that includes even the RRFC, and I know it's included in their curriculum somehow also, when we get there.
And so the role of the donor, I think we had talked about potentially tapping another facilitator that we could work with to serve as the role of the donor in the demonstration. We have, under the facilitators tab, we have a list of the other facilitators that are coming with us. So obviously we have Lise and Mian as our lead facilitators. In addition, we have Lindsay from the Bahamas, who is a polio coordinator, and Natty Moodley from South Africa, who is representing the EMGA group.
What if we put both of them in? If we need 4 participants in the demonstration, do I have that correct?
Well, we need a staff partner
So we could,
to be involved, plus Mian and then one other person, right?
I think at minimum, we need a donor, we need a staff partner, and we need,
A coordinator.
a regional leader. Yep. Unless the group thinks that we want a 4th position, and again, I'll turn to my fundraising colleague professionals to see if you have thoughts about the demonstration.
I mean, there's always a role for someone to sort of oversee and narrate the whole process that goes through. So they're stopping and emphasizing certain things. So that could be a role as well. But Dory has other thoughts on that.
so what if for that overview, I'm trying to piece the pieces together. If the overview, let's just say, is Celeste, she would also then narrate what happens in the demonstration. So we could have Celeste do the overview, Mian, Maria, and Lindsay as our demonstrators, and Celeste would narrate the demonstration to tie it all together.
Do we want to go with Natty as an EMGA since we have a polio coordinator represented?
I think that'd be great. He's so experienced. I think that it would be great to use his skills in that way.
In real life, you probably will have, let me use the word, an ordinary Rotarian who may be involved in all of this. Because if you look at that 4-step process, the identification may not be done by any of these people. It may not be from the EMGA, EPNZ, staff partner. It may just come from some ordinary Rotarian in the district, for example, from a club. So maybe there's a role to let them know that, look, this could be a resource for you because these are the people who know the people anyway.
Yes, and for the purposes of these demonstrations, sometimes we just skip that part because that's hard to demonstrate. And so sometimes we will say things like, a club president called their EMGA and said, hey, this person, blah, 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 not blah, blah, blah. Just to include that because it's hard. There's certain things that are hard to show, or that can also be a role of a narrator, right? So as an EMGA or as an EPNC, you got a phone call, you got an email, now what do you do? Because identification it's hard to show sometimes, right? So sometimes that's the other advantage of a narrator. Sometimes they can skip, they can skip some of the things to make sure that it keeps flowing well in that kind of a visual setting.
Great. So what I'm hearing is that the roles for the demonstration, we want the narrator, we want the solicitor, the donor, and the staff person. And we think that the person who gives the 4-step process overview can also then serve as the narrator. So let's say for argument's sake, it's Celeste, and then Mian will play the polio coordinator, the person who is soliciting the gift. We'll have Maria Molina maybe serve as the staff partner role in the demonstration. And then Natty as the person being solicited. How does everyone feel about that?
Question. Since Natty has been an EMGA and Mian is an End Polio Now coordinator, would we look at flipping those roles?
She said she wanted to be the one to ask.
Yeah, Christine, I think we certainly could. I think what we had been talking about was showing how the four-step process is also relevant to polio coordinators. Since they are not going to have that in-depth four-step process discussion session, right? The EMJs will. Trying to show that that the fundamentals of this apply to anyone who's attempting to solicit major gifts, including a polio coordinator, right?
Yes.
Well, and if we
Understood.
establish that the donor is motivated by polio early on, right, that's going to be the key to this, is why
Yes.
the EPNC would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Remind me who Marie is? She a staff partner?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
we're
great.
in,
Thank you.
Mexico City.
Okay.
Yeah, Sarah, that's a good point. We can make sure that the narrator script, right, kind of establishes that. Or part of the conversation, right, kind of sets that stage that this person was determined as a prospect interested in supporting polio eradication.
And maybe the EMGA is the person that makes that discovery and then brings in the EPNC because of their expertise. Is that realistic?
Not in the US. I would say probably more the other way around, that if the EMGA was talking to somebody and it sounded like it was going to be a larger, more complex gift, then they would bring in the EMGA to help with that. But it's our script. We can write what we want.
Sure. Yeah, my only, and I love the opportunity for people to play, you know, kind of deep, complex roles. My only thought is I want to make sure that the EMGAs who are in the audience watching this are identifying their role and the expectations for their role with what they see up on the stage.
And I think because they have an in-depth discussion on the four-step process, part 1 and part 2, I think that that is something that we can tie in. I would think the other way around, if we went with an EMGA demonstration, the polio coordinators might be like, this isn't for me. And then they don't have a discussion session on it afterwards either. From my perspective, I think that they would kind of tune out a little bit more like, oh, this is an EMGA thing. I don't need to listen to this.
And another thing is that it would add some value also to the EMPC. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and
makes sense.
I think the person giving the overview can say who in the audience feels they have responsibility for soliciting major gifts, right? And hopefully all the EMGAs will be like, I do. And they'll say, EPNCs, you also have, you know, this is a responsibility and opportunity too, to maybe kind of help remind people, Christine, that like, to bring that connection you're talking about, but then also the surprise of it's the EPNC doing the ask.
Yep.
A question. In terms of the role play, I think it's only those of us in this room who knows that Marianne is an EPNZ. I mean, for the purpose of the role play, the people in the audience need not necessarily know what their roles in real life is. It's just a role play. So it may not even matter. I mean, Marianne may be doing the asking and asking as an EMGA. Not necessarily because she's an end polio coordinator that she's asking as an EPNZ. So maybe it doesn't matter much.
I certainly think that with this demonstration, we do have some options on how we script it and kind of what the point that we are trying to make is. If the point is that this is just sort of general demonstration of a four-step process, I think the solicitor could be anyone, right? if we are trying to make the point and really communicate to polio coordinators, this is for you too, then maybe we do want to call out Mian as a polio coordinator who is soliciting a major gift.
Which I like that idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as an EMGA, I support it.
Great. So we have, are we okay with the roles we assigned Celeste and Maria? Celeste is the overview person and then the narrator, and then Maria playing a role in the demonstration?
I'm fine with that. I think one question that I had as I'm sitting here giving Celeste a heads up. When we've done this before, when it's been a smaller group and it's been all staff, we've written it ourselves, but if we're doing it with staff and leadership, who's gonna write that? Is that something we're gonna have the four of them get together to write, or we're gonna have staff write it and share it? I'm kind of agnostic on it. I just need to know how to level set expectations.
I would say that we would want to start with the staff experts writing it and then ask the members who are involved for their input. Maybe change up some of the words, to sound more natural or get their input. But yeah, I think having the start of the demonstration script coming from the staff who are the professionals, who are the experts to kind of guide it. And then we can get some input from Mian and Nettie.
Does
And then-
Marie speak English or will we need interpretation?
Maria does.
Oh, Maria.
She is fluent in English, yeah, very easy.
And then we would have them do a practice before the live demonstration, so then they can work out the kinks themselves. Perfect.
Yeah, likely we would do something on Sunday. We'll certainly have to look at Celeste and Maria's schedule. When we can do a rehearsal practice session with them. We may want to do a phone call ahead of time, like after the script is written, just to kind of talk it through. We can work with you, both David and Dory, on what we think is best for that. So then after that session in the morning on Tuesday, we transit into a couple of different sessions. So after the general session in the morning, the EMGAs will go into part 1 of 2 on the 4-step process. And again, as we talked about, that this is something that we really want to make sure they understand, have a chance to discuss a little bit, and spend some time with each of the 4 steps. At that same time, the polio coordinators have a session on how to get to 50 million. And that is our session that we have John Germ involved in. So I think we've got 20 or so minutes at the very beginning. We can look at that in more detail when we talk about the curriculum. But having John participate and kind of give the motivational piece to the polio coordinators, and then have a chance for some discussion after that.
Just a quick question. I don't know how to phrase this. Will John be upset that he's not speaking at a general session?
I don't know. I don't think we have.
I just think it's something we need to think about.
Okay.
Who is the best person to check in with, John, on that?
So Claire, before
I'm not trying to put you on the spot
Yeah,
at all.
before
I'm
volunteering you.
thinking this through that, you're bringing a past president in and will the expectation be that he gets to address, the whole group? I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have talked to him at all about the breakout session yet.
We softly had him hold the date on his calendar. We can always change that, but we did have him, because his calendar gets booked pretty quick. We did last time have him softly hold that date. So, but he will be charged with polio fundraising for next year. So I don't think that he would be totally that upset about it, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, but I also think it's a good time for him to set fundraising expectations with the new E EPNC.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm not saying don't bring him in at all. I'm just saying, will he be disappointed that he's not also speaking at the general session?
Well, does it make sense
If
to
we're
have a
not concerned about it, I
conversation?
don't know. Yinka, do you have any thoughts on that? I don't know how well you know John.
I just imagine John will be happy sitting across the table or standing across the table and talking directly to those he expects will make the impact, rather than just a large hall.
Okay, maybe it's nothing to be worried about. Just crossed my mind.
So I think if we're raising it, this is not something that we should let go yet. I wonder if we invite John first, explaining what the plan is for polio and what we anticipate as his role, and allowing him to react to that before another speaker is invited to that slot, or someone has a conversation with John.
I was also gonna say, we had him slotted in for a potential speaker for the Global Support Seminar as well, which will happen before GPS Global Philanthropy
I thought we
Seminar.
were having him only for this one, Madeline. I thought we had talked about another person.
We had a tentative option. We had a number of options for that general session.
Yeah, I think that we had, when we had talked before, we really were focused on him coming to this one. And so I think it's either he's, we talk about how we approach him on this. I think he feels a lot of ownership over polio. And if we have a concern that we might offend him, I think we should talk to him about it. I'm happy to do that. I don't have I asked who the best person is so that we can discuss it.
Well, I mean, I think of John as a pretty easygoing guy. And if I'm the only one that's even concerned, maybe it's not something to be concerned about.
Sarah, I do like your approach of maybe inviting him or talking to him about the role that we see and kind of see if he's like, wait a second, what about the general session? So not inviting who we have, as you mentioned, Sarah, on our list yet, doing that invite first, kind of feeling him out. If he raises some red flags or feels like he wants to talk more about it, then maybe we revisit.
Are you okay with that, Sarah?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know he feels very strongly about polio, and if he comes and someone else is delivering the message, I want to make sure he's okay with that.
Right. Right.
I don't want him to be surprised, certainly.
Right. Totally. Thank you.
But I think it's the way of presenting. It's more, as we discussed now, that it's on the why. Why? So yeah, that's a different thing. But I'm not sure.
Well, I think John is great at presenting the why. I've heard him. He is. No, he is. I mean, he's really, that's my opinion. I've heard him give updates. I've also heard him, talk about why. So, but I think if you're comfortable with approaching him, Sarah, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Happy to
Claire,
work
I
with the
think
team on
Claire
that and
might
take
have
a lead.
something to say.
I think he'd be agreeable. The other would be to have Maria Wren give the why, and he gives the goals, the overall 50 million, the directive, like he follows her or goes right before her, and then she explains the why. Like, I don't think he needs 15 minutes. He could do his part in 5. Like, I'm looking for you to work with districts to give DDF 1,500 per club, and here's why. And he brings up Maria Wren to give the why. If he doesn't go for the other part, Sarah, like, I think he could do his part in 5 with the why being done by Maria Wren.
So our,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
I mean, Sarah talked this over with him, but the other option, like Claire is saying, is you can just make a short remark at the opening and say, we will discuss this in more details at the breakout with the polio zone coordinators. And guys, I'm coming to you, or something like that. It's okay.
Or the other option is you and polio now coordinators are so important to me. As a past president, I came here just to talk to you. And that kind of sells it too. Like, you're so important to us reaching the goal. I took a day to come spend an hour with you guys.
So what I'm hearing is that we start off with the invitation to be this speaker in the breakout session, messaging it that this really shows the polio coordinators how important they are. Getting some one-on-one time with John and the polio coordinators is really motivating to them. We really want them to feel important and special and to hear directly from someone who's very involved. And then if he is not interested in that limited role, we offer a combo with him and Marie Eren.
Yeah, I think we put out there that we're gonna introduce polio and have Maria Wren talk about the why, and that, you know, it's a commitment everyone needs to support. And then we would have him deliver the specifics for EMGAs, or I'm sorry, EPNCs. But I think we have to mention what's happening in the general session to be truly transparent.
Great, sounds like we have a plan.
And I think if he is unhappy, he will
Oh.
either tell me directly or I will hear about it. So I think
Yeah.
that's a,
Exactly, right? This is his opportunity to say, I don't think that's the right direction, or I think that's fine. And we're giving him that.
Thank you.
So we are right at our break time for lunch. So we'll have some time after lunch to finish up the agenda before we move on to another section. And we are scheduled to come back here at 1:30 Evanston time to start up our agenda again.
can we do a sound check? Can you hear us in the room? Thank you.
And is our sound good?
Yes.
Well, unfortunately for our virtual friends, you missed out on some wonderful treats that Lee's brought. We're all sharing and passing them around. Yep, chocolate.
Well, enjoy one for me, please.
Yeah.
There should be a reward for making it into the building. So I appreciate that.
Okay, I think we have everyone. I know Mian was gonna not join us, I think, for the rest of the afternoon since it's quite late for her. Yeah. So we are back looking at our program. And we are on day 2. So that's page 3 of the program. And so we were just talking about the morning sessions that the EMGAs will go into 2 different breakouts on the 4-step process, part 1 and part 2. And then the polio coordinators have 2 sessions as well. That first one, how to get to 50 million, is the one where we currently have John Germ slotted to come and speak to the group. And then the second session that they'll go to that morning, the polio coordinators, opportunities for giving, focusing on our DDF strategy, the Polio Plus Society, stewardship. So a couple of different topics that we wanted to talk about with the polio coordinators. And then our participants go into their lunch break. And then we have another optional session over lunch. This one's a little bit different. So this is a question and answer session with our Rotary staff. And so this is an opportunity for them to meet with their staff specialists and ask some, specific questions about their budget, questions about travel, things that we have found over the years are too specific for a big discussion, because usually someone has a question that's really particular to them. And so we have tried different versions of this for a couple of years with regional leader training and have found some success with it. That the participants really like the opportunity to get some one-on-one time with our staff and then be able to talk through some of those very specific issues. So I don't know if Renee or Christine, you want to speak to that session at all?
I can speak to it for a moment. It's very different for the EMGAs having their staff partner here. There's a lot of unique region questions that can be answered by the staff partner. But then there are additional unique EMGA questions like, we're thinking of hosting this type of event. Can I do this thing for it? Which Lindsay Clark and the rest of the regional leader support team would be able to address. Something that's more personal to the participant. So we found that these question and answer times just address those instead of having to have a facilitator in the room derail a conversation to go very personal one-on-one with a volunteer. Claire, you've never participated in these with us before, but you have done many Q&As with your EPNC, so I'm sure it would be very similar to that sort of standard for you too. So.
And then our afternoon general session is focusing on donors. So we have a couple of topics in our general session. One is donor-centric practices. So talking about that concept, we talked a little bit earlier today about this, about being donor-centric and the importance of being donor-centric for positions like EMGAs and EPNCs to really make sure that your donors or prospective donors are feeling heard and that you're matching their needs with the needs of our Rotary Foundation. So the second topic is DEI and storytelling. And we talked about the importance of DEI in all things that we do, but really specifically too, for those of us who are supporting our Rotary Foundation. And the benefit of storytelling for these fundraising positions. We even talked a little bit about that earlier, that a powerful story can really connect with a potential donor more than sometimes statistics or data. So for the donor-centric practices, we had brainstormed one speaker option at our first meeting, and that was Brenda Cressy. I know that she has a lot of great experience. But are there any other options for someone who maybe you've seen or heard that does a really great job with being donor-centric, really listening to the donors, connecting them with the right opportunities? Stephanie Urchick.
I'm sorry, love the idea of Brenda also. I mean, I think she would be fabulous. And I don't remember if we had talked about if there were other names that came up at our last meeting.
I think Brenda was the front runner and we had said that we would revisit at this meeting.
Well, I would certainly still support Brenda. Yinka, do you have any thoughts?
I worked with Brenda in a webinar on legacy, and she's tremendous. So I will support, yeah.
Will Brenda be coming in for anything over this weekend, or we'd be asking? Okay.
Yeah, this would be a special invitation as a speaker. We don't currently have her listed as being in town for anything else.
Right, and we're looking at John, Germ, and Brenda being the two people that would be not already at the event, or is there someone else?
Well, Ryan Rowe,
And he's coming, is he coming from where?
Montreal,
Montreal.
Montreal.
So not a very big of a difference in terms of ticket price, probably. So we're looking at 3 domestic, essentially.
Plus hotel and everything else.
Yeah, so that's the only caution is the extra expense of having 3 external speakers. Unless we had an opportunity with one of our facilitators. Is there anyone or a staff opportunity? Is this something that we could consider? Eric, our chief philanthropy officer, would there be an opportunity there?
Or this is a wild idea. Marge Cole, who's our incoming EMGA from San Diego, has been a fantastic DRFC. And one of the things about her and her own giving history is that her money has been pretty evenly split between endowment fund and polio and annual fund. And the endowment fund money has been split between water and the Peace Centers. She loves everything. But she's also really good at talking to donors in the area about what their passions are. And so it might be a little bit of a different take on things, but she's a great example of how, you know, she can't be pigeonholed into one thing. She cares about lots of different things. And so how do you talk to donors who are interested in lots of things? So.
And you said she's an
I-
incoming EMGA. Yep.
And I think the EMGAs and the EPNCs like to see participants on, speaking as well.
I've worked with Marge when I was on the West Coast. I might have solicited her for a gift, I think, but and she's a significant donor as well, and I would second her abilities in terms of this particular role.
Well, I love the idea of having a facilitator that's there. I'm sorry, a participant speak. I don't know her, but sounds like a great suggestion.
Yeah, she's a past RRFC also. She spoke up several times on the EMGA onboarding calls we did in September and talked a little bit. I think someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say that the Paul Harris Society coordinators started from her district.
She's from 5340, so kind of that whole powerhouse. Everybody out of 5340 is a good fundraiser.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a great opportunity to use someone who is, she might need some coaching, right?
Certainly, and that's a great point, Sarah, that we can connect any of the speakers that we select with a staff subject matter expert to help guide them. We typically offer some speaking points to give them an idea of what the speech will be about, what we'd like it to be about. And then certainly we can connect them with someone from our philanthropy team to help make sure that the speech or the remarks are kind of going in the right direction.
You still review all the speeches ahead of time anyway, right? And offer suggestions. Yeah.
Yep.
That would be great.
Okay.
On your participant list, Marjorie Cole from Zone 26. Marge. Okay. So that's the Steve Brown district. Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that sounds like a great idea.
Okay, so I'm hearing the group is leaning towards Marge Cole. Great. And then the next topic, DEI and Oh, sorry.
I thought what we're looking at here is somebody that has helped donors may match their interest with the TRF interest. Not necessarily, I mean, what I hear from you about Marge is that she has put her own donations into different things, and she may have been guided by somebody else. And I thought, is that somebody else we're looking for? So I'm just thinking whether Brenda should still remain the person if she has helped people. I mean, guide donors into different boxes.
Yinka, you raise a really good point. I think the concept with Marge, though, is the idea of what do donors want? And here is someone who has shown interest in different areas. And I think what we'd be looking for her is talking about at different points and for different reasons. I was interested in this. And I'd be curious to find out, how did she learn how to decide to give her gifts? And this might be, again, that opportunity that Lee's brought up, that we're saying, remember, there are different areas of focus you can give to. There are the different, and that the big concept is listening to the donor.
She also did a lot of fundraising with the previous major gift officer who was out there. So she's done some of that too. But so I think, yeah, and I think it could go either way, right? About how important it is to listen to donors about what their priorities are. And sometimes we think we know what the priorities are, and then they shift because of reasons that we don't always know. So I think she can speak to it both conceptually as well as from her own personal experience.
I think that if the way we want to play this is that she tells a story of how she felt being helped or being assisted into getting her money into her area of interest. So she's saying, I'm here, this is my story. I was very happy, I was a very happy donor. And so if you are donor-centric, our donors may also feel like me. If that is the way the story is coming, then it's fine.
I think that's an important part, because when donors are happy, they give more. And when we were talking earlier about, I got the exact words, about the carrot and the stick of giving to polio, right? You can use that stick and make people give, but then as soon as you remove the stick, they're done giving, right? Because it's not from their heart. But when you touch their heart, people give, and often give more than perhaps what we might have thought they were able to give.
Michelle, this is a question for you. For this session, donor-centric practices, what is the goal of this session? Are we looking at this session from the donor's perspective, where Marge would come in and what Yinka was explaining, what her story would be? Or are we looking for somebody to tell the group of incoming regional leaders how to position themselves as those seeking out donors and trying to match them with their interests? Because if it's the latter, then maybe Marge would not fit into that category. But if we're looking to hear from the donor herself, then she might be a good option. So I'm not sure what the goal of this session is. So if you know, can you please share?
So I was going to say, this is replacing a session when we used to have a full section on being donor centric, and we talked a lot about what that looks like and why it matters. So I think that was part of it, that this is replacing that section. They do get some of the, I don't say the rules, but they do get some of the concepts behind it when we go through the 4-step process. We talk about the whole point of cultivation is to get to know the donor and what their priorities are and what's important to them. So they get some of that there. And so this, because it's a general session, I would say the more interesting and engaging we can make it, the better, because you are in a general session. It's not going to be as much back and forth as perhaps in a training session. I mean, it's just to get people thinking about, oftentimes people are like, my goal is to get polio money, or my goal is to get annual fund money, or my goal is to get money for issue X. And this is more about What is the donor seeking? What does the donor want? And I think because of Marge's prior role, she can speak to that, whatever angle, whatever priority we want to put on it or whatever emphasis we want to put on it, she'll be more than capable of doing.
Yeah, I think that the goal of this, and I don't know if we had finalized the angle, was to call out the importance of being donor centric. So now, however angle we want to come at it, I think we have some good options, right? The perspective of the solicitor and being donor centric is important so that you can meet your goals, or the perspective from the donor, right? Talking about how they felt, how they were connected, how they were able to help. I think really what we wanted was for all of the participants to hear how important it is to keep the donor in mind. Don't get lost in your own goals, your own ideas of who should be giving to what and how much, but you need that the donors are central to this whole thing. So I think, I think the group can decide which angle we want to go at, but that was, I think, the general idea. This is an important concept we can't lose sight of.
I have another vision because I also look from the side of accepting the message and accepting if the audience, and we talked about it on lunch, it's also about culture. Do I fully accept Marjorie to be the one who says to me that I have to be donor centric? So that's another point I think to look at.
If it helps with anybody, I was just chatting with the person who's her staff partner, gift officer in San Diego. And she's currently also running a giving campaign in District 5340 district, encouraging, they have a whole campaign to help people set up named endowed funds for 25,000 and up, whether outright or bequest. So she's launched that campaign, so she can also, on a very practical level, yeah.
But don't get me wrong. I'm sure she has the capability and to do so, but it's also about the acceptance of the people who are listening. And for instance, I know the one I talk about, he would say, well, that's my classmate. Sorry to say it in this way, but I think that's.
Didn't you say she's been in our RFC? So she's already served as a regional leader.
Yeah.
So she sounds like has a proven track record. It's not like she's trying to share how we should do it and she hasn't already done it.
It is a different approach. I was just also looking at it from a budget perspective of not flying in a leader for an hour, or not even an hour, for 15 minutes on the stage, seeing if there was a more cost-effective
But
approach.
maybe on the side of introduction then, that there should be a very clear introduction from for her to have overcome this obstacle as.
Well, I think there typically is. I mean, there's the speakers are all introduced with a little bit of a background of, I mean, not a lengthy introduction, but.
So Dory, am I hearing from you correctly that you think that Marge could speak on both sides of this issue? She has both been a donor and she has also solicited major gifts. And so she has seen both sides.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it kind of interesting, because she can speak to it. Again, we'd have to think a little bit about how to frame it and how long we would want her to talk, obviously. But I think she could do something about her own personal experience as a donor, how that's helped her be a successful fundraiser. She could even talk a little bit about this campaign, possibly. I don't know how far along down the road they are, but maybe her role as an RRFC. And hear her talk. I think also the idea of, why she's chosen to give to different things and how that's changed over time. Could be a good thing too. And so even if you think you know the donor, keeping that relationship going and authentic is important, because the donor changes over time as we all grow and change over time. So.
One question. Can this be another role play? We
do some role playing like this when we go through the curriculum. in the four-step process section where we have the leader's guide and the workbook, and we have the EMGAs and the staff partners go through the different scenarios. So there is some of that built into the cultivation section about having them practice finding out what their Rotary interests are. So that probably is the closest that we've got. Kind of finding out why they give to what they do and what's their most, forgot what the phrase is, what's their Rotary passion, but it's phrased better. It's phrased better than that. But did bring it up a little bit there.
Yeah, so Dory's right. We have a little bit of that, but do you want to say more about what you're thinking, Yinka, in this respect?
I just thought rather than somebody just standing there and talking, that people may learn more by seeing a role play demonstrating being donor-centric. That's what I was thinking. I don't know how much time we have, and if the time we have will fit that, but that's just what I had in mind. So people can actually see, what exactly does this mean in a role play? That was what I was thinking.
I'm wondering if looking at the role playing in the four-step process, if when we get there, if that would help answer that question, if that's enough, because one of the things we talked about that too is also about timing, and it may not be the right timing for the donor. Maybe they've got, well, in the US, maybe they have children in college that they're having to pay for, or they're going to sell their business in 1 year and then they'll have the funds. We talk a little bit about that kind of piece a little bit in there too about the timing. So I'm wondering, because that gives us more time than this, which I don't think is going to be terribly long, I don't think.
I'm wondering if we could even have the speaker in this session reference something that we saw in the previous demonstration to kind of make it a point. Right, kind of tie it in.
Because there's other concepts too. There's issues around privacy, right? And what we, not just legally. There may be all kinds of things that we could reference as well that kind of make it a richer experience.
So not to belabor this, but I'll just throw out here, Dory, to what you're saying, right? Some of the more kind of corporate internal things that TRF does to be donor centric. For any of the general sessions, do we want our Chief Philanthropy Officer to have a speaking role? In my mind, we have two groups of regional leaders serving TRF, and I'm wondering if kind of from that corporate messaging standpoint, it would be helpful to have Eric maybe briefly highlight a few things that TRF does in terms of its maybe kind of internal practices, or highlight a couple of success stories or best practices that we encourage all of our volunteer fundraisers and our staff fundraisers to really support, to demonstrate how donor-centric they are.
I do think it would be important to include Eric at some point, for sure.
I was just thinking, I wonder if we could, maybe kind of going along the storytelling theme, could Eric talk about how to create a story from the information that the Rotary Foundation gives to EPNCs and EMGAs, right? They get a lot of data, they get newsletters, they get updates, they get reports, they get all kinds of things from Rotary. I'm just brainstorming here. I'm wondering if could he talk about how to synthesize that, how to create a compelling story from all the stuff that we have available, all the resources.
Michelle, for which topic is that going to go? What are you suggesting that for?
This same general session, it doesn't fit exactly into either of these topics, but if our priority was to feature Eric, I was trying to think of things that might fit in with his expertise.
The other thing that Eric might be, I'm sorry.
Sorry. The Tuesday morning, 8:30 to 9:30. Why and how we give, would he be a good introduction to the overall fundraising goals in that session on that Tuesday morning? Eric?
I was also thinking he'd be really good at the, talking about success stories on Tuesday afternoon in the closing section. He's done variations of that before. We can talk a lot about that.
So, but in terms of like the need we have, it seems to be around this donor centric. Is there an opportunity for him to kind of intro and be this, you know, our donors are everything potentially, and kind of going from that angle? And then Marge could talk about some of her experiences.
I think that's an excellent idea.
And I think that addresses this idea of authority, right? An expert on the topic. And then we can get a real life experience as well. And it sounds like Marge has both experiences, both trying to match people with what their passions are to give, as well as her own commitments.
So what does everyone think about that? Slotting in Eric as our Chief Philanthropy Officer at the beginning of that session. He can really focus on the importance of our donors, as Sarah mentioned, right? We can't do any of this great work without the donors. So the importance of them and being donor centric, and then moving into Marge, who can talk a little bit more about both sides of the perspective, being a donor and also being someone who is soliciting major gifts, keeping in mind the importance of being donor centric.
I like that idea if you think we have time.
Yeah, we can, Madeline and I can play around with the timing a little bit for this, just to make sure that it works. Okay, so then that session, we'll start with Eric and then move into Marge, and then our next topics, we had DEI and storytelling. So we had talked about a couple of different angles. One, the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of what we're doing at Rotary and the Rotary Foundation right now. That is an important way for our participants to feel engaged. We also talked about how it can tie into being donor-centric, right? To really be thinking about the donor's experience, how they are included, how are they being treated, right? That can all play into whether or not someone is interested in giving a gift to our organization. And then specifically DEI and fund development and the storytelling aspect. So I think we had identified one speaker potentially, Sarah Tetzloff, who is
A staff member.
a staff member
Yep, Polio Plus communications lead.
for the kind of storytelling piece. And then any thoughts on a DEI speaker, someone who can really kind of bring in DEI and fund development, right? The connection to those things. Why DEI is important, why Rotary and the Rotary Foundation are focusing on it. That kind of leads into why are we talking about it at a philanthropy seminar.
So what if Eric takes all of that as part of his intro? You know, including the DEI, the relevance with fund development, etc., etc. Takes that as part of his intro, and then we'll go into Marge talking about donor-centric themes, and then we'll then go into Sarah talking about storytelling specifically.
Yeah, what does everyone think? Any ideas?
It's a good combination, I think. Yeah, that's wise.
Great.
Yeah, I think it would, we'll just have to make sure we're supporting Eric in the, because I think DEI and fundraising is a pretty evolving concept within the field. So I think I like the approach too, because it can be very much, we're on a learning journey and we are, you know, these are the things we're focused on.
And ultimately, it's about being donor centric as well, so. If it-
And if our chief philanthropic officer is talking about this new approach to the way we do our things, it can also be very impactful, you know. So if he has to go learn something to get ready for that, then so be it.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? As the head of Rotary's, philanthropic endeavors, him also reinforcing the importance of DEI, right? It's not just, I know we talk a lot about it related to membership, which, we definitely should, but making sure we're not forgetting when we're working with, when we're soliciting donors, when we're supporting them, stewarding them, that to keep DEI in mind is important as well for the foundation. Okay. So then it sounds like we'll have Eric start off, and we've added a little bit more to his speech, really introducing why the DEI is so important to the foundation, tying it into that concept of being donor centric, right? Listening to donors, giving them what they are interested in as an opportunity. Moving into Marge, who's going to talk specifically about being donor centric, both from her perspective as a donor and as someone who has solicited major gifts. And then moving into storytelling. And we had talked about our staff member, Sarah, from Polio Plus Communications being an option there. Great. Any other thoughts, ideas for that one?
Just on a lighter mood, I imagine that storytelling and storytelling are the same. Just the spelling.
Oh. Yes, that is, that's the fancy way of spelling it. Okay, so I think we've got that session in pretty good shape now. Any other last comments or questions? Great. So then that afternoon, we have a short transit period. And then we move into a discussion session on events and recognition. This discussion session is a joint mixed session again, so EMGAs and EPNCs will be in the discussion together. This topic specifically, we had identified at our first planning meeting that's something that really is involved in both roles, right? Both roles are working on events, maybe not the same events, but they're working on events, and recognition certainly is a big piece of what they're doing, right? So we thought there could be a lot of great idea sharing and crossover between the two groups. So we have them mixed there. And then the next session is on goals and action planning. And similar to that first roles and responsibilities session, it's very similar content, but we've split the group out by program so that they have a chance to really talk about their specific goals, their next steps, what are they going to do once they leave this event. And then we move into our closing general session. So here we had talked about a beneficiary success story. as kind of a great way to have something motivating, inspirational near the end of the session, end of the event. And then some closing and thank you remarks from both our moderator and our trustee chair-elect. So for the beneficiary success story, we had talked about Ryan Rowe as an option, and Ryan is the executive director of Handwash. Is that correct? And he is also an
Peace Fellow.
alum. Okay, Peace Fellow.
Yep, I think he graduated in the 2012 class from Duke UNC. Quite a motivational speaker, has also done fundraising in his role as executive director of Handwash. This whole Haiti program is just very inspirational. And I know Barry was kind of excited about having Ryan speak too, so. I've just gotten to know him better in the last 6 months, and he's a pretty amazing individual.
Great. So really kind of having him share his experience and kind of the benefits that he received from being a recipient, and kind of what he's able to do since then. Great. Any thoughts on Ryan or other ideas of someone who was a beneficiary of our Rotary Foundation?
So what would he be sharing? Or what would he be speaking about? Because I know what the hand wash program is, but that's a separate entity. So I'm kind of curious what his message would be.
Yeah,
kinda how
it's
that would
not
frame.
specifically about hand wash. It's more,
Beneficiary of the Rotary Foundation.
and then sort of the success or the direction that it's brought him. So
Right.
he'll probably mention that what he does with hand wash, but it's not about hand wash.
And again, with the review process, the speaking points that we send him in the review process, we can emphasize that and request that he not do any solicitations for another organization at our event. I think that's a reasonable request.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I was just gonna say, because that happens. So thank you. Yes, we'd like people.
Great
that's
point,
fine,
Dory,
and
great
that is
point.
Fine.
Great
right?
point.
We all
Yep.
support, well, many of us support other organizations in addition to Rotary, but at a Rotary event, we really want to keep the focus on Rotary. So.
If we happen to be looking for multiple speakers, or an alternative would be someone on the staff who's been a former ambassadorial scholar back in the day. So one person that comes to mind is Jamie Revord. She happens to be our director of annual giving on the polio and philanthropy team. So just another idea, depending on how that might fall into place.
I was wondering, do we, about somebody from Global Grants, if being able to talk about not just the numbers, because that gets kind of not exciting. We did 52 grants. But if there could be something about trying to get to some of that impact a little bit about what's happened, in some of these areas around, I don't know, around water and sanitation or around disease prevention and treatment or something, and talking about the impact of the Rotary grants and what they've been able to accomplish in different parts of the world.
Dory, can I build on that idea? I wonder, because Chris and Barry are both gonna have thank you. I wonder if we could work with them to incorporate some of that messaging rather than bringing in a fourth speaker.
Another thought is, and tell me what you think about this, because of Ryan's current role, he has been intimately involved with about 4 global grants so far. So if you wanted him to go down that road as well, somehow during his presentation, he probably could do that. Just a thought. But I love Jamie too.
I think if we're looking for a beneficiary to wow people, I think it's the staff one won't be as impressive. I love Jamie, big fan, but I don't know that it'll have the same emotional impact.
I'll pass that along to Jamie.
Thank you very much.
I mean, if I understand what we want here, we're looking for somebody who has benefited from the Rotary Foundation, standing out there and telling us, thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Without this, I wouldn't have been this. This made a difference to my life. And sending a message to those in the room. This is the reason, because of people like me, you need to go out there and ask and do more. So it has to be somebody who benefited either directly. I mean, I wish we had somebody who was a beneficiary of one of our heart surgery programs or something, who stands there and said, if not for you, I wouldn't be alive. You know what I mean? But I know that may be difficult to find in North America. So it would seem to me that the closest we can find would be a peace fellow. If he had actually made a lot of progress in that aspect of endeavor.
Yeah, and I think Ryan is a good option, right? I mean, he, after becoming a Peace Fellow, he now is the executive director of this great Rotary, funded initiative, right? The other thing I was thinking is I wonder if in Chris and Barry's remarks, do either of you have a personal story of seeing a project firsthand? Again, kind of tying in the thank you. This is why we're doing what we're doing. I've seen firsthand, and the kind of motivating, go out there, get those great gifts for our foundation because we've seen it too, to kind of go along those same lines.
I'll expect Barry to have many of that from across the world.
I like that approach a lot, Michelle, because I think it kind of reinforces the thank you and the why of the whole event itself and their roles.
It's also demonstrating a little bit of storytelling and how it can be effectively used.
Barry obviously is going to have way more stories than me, but I could go at it from a perspective of an NID experience, or I could go at it from a grant. I mean, I've got both. So depending on what you guys think, let me know your thoughts on that.
Well, and maybe even we connect you and Barry. And so if Barry's going in one direction with a story, then you can go, we wouldn't want two NID stories, for example.
Well, right, correct.
Yeah, I like you coordinating, and I like telling those kind of stories for motivating the whole audience. It's great.
So how do we feel for our initial speaker about Ryan Rowe? And again, I think we've got some great options with him, right? Not only was he a Peace Fellow, but he has been involved in global grants with the organization that he is working with right now. So I think there's a couple of different ways that we could have him share his story.
I'm fine.
And I know we had talked about previously also asking Barry to weave a little bit of the teamwork aspect in, kind of bringing it all back together, which I think he can definitely do. The importance of, working together to accomplish these great goals. You're not alone. You've got a great support system. You've got teammates. So I think that we can add a little bit of that in there as well.
I didn't remember, maybe I'm confusing this with the Global Support Seminar, having Ian Risley also present at some point as the current and then Barry as the incoming, or did we not do that?
That was for the other
Okay,
session.
okay, thank you.
Chris, you are doing what all of us have been doing for the last several months, is mixing up which event is which. On several of our meetings, we're like, wait, that's not for this one. And so, oh,
Just a question, were Jennifer to be in the building any of those 2 days, will it make any sense to just have her pop in and say hello? Or will you just want people to just meet her on the corridor?
yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure if she is going to be around at this time or not. Certainly any senior leader or president that is around that wants to come, they are more than welcome to. Typically, because it's pet season, they're not here. But I mean, we can definitely look at her schedule and see if she will be around for either of these.
Might be more likely to be here than him, but.
Yeah, I think what we've done in the past is do sort of a blanket invitation to those senior leaders and say, for your reference, this event, is taking place these dates. You are more than welcome to attend. It's sort of we know you're very busy, so don't feel pressure. But yes, if they are around or interested, they definitely can attend. And so then after our closing general session, we have a shuttle service available back to the hotel. And then we had talked about having a reception on the 18th floor, so here, for any or all of the participants. We had talked about that many of the participants will not have seen the new layout and design features of the 18th floor, since most of it happened during the pandemic. And so it would be a great opportunity to kind of have a little closing celebration, and also give people the opportunity to see, what it's like up here now.
And some of them maybe have never been to One Rotary Center at all, like Lee's. This is her first time, which I didn't realize. So I think definitely giving them the opportunity to come to the 18th floor would be a highlight. And certainly if Jennifer's around, she could just wander down and join us.
And just looking at Jennifer's current schedule, she's going to be in Portugal then.
And Gordon probably
Traveling.
won't be
Monday,
around
Tuesday.
either. Do you think Gordon would? She's probably gonna be traveling.
No worries.
Yeah, we definitely run into some scheduling crunches during this season with all the different events. But yeah, if we can figure that out, they're definitely welcome to attend.
Looks like he's unscheduled.
Should I say mindset question? If we say shuttle available from 1745 and the reception is 1800, even though we said it's optional, but we want to encourage people, shouldn't we make the shuttle available somewhere in the middle of the reception? So
Yeah,
that even those who ordinarily may just show up for 15 minutes and then leave or something.
sure, we can discuss that. I think we had originally thought having the shuttle available right away for anyone who did not want to attend or had a flight to catch, that they could leave. Yeah, I mean, I think we're open. Do we want to keep the reception optional?
In our call to meeting letter right now, we are gently discouraging participants to leave on this last day, just because we want them to be present until the end of the training. So that in this case might include reception if we wanted to make it that way. So we are gently telling them, make sure that your flight leaves the day after the event closes. I do believe there will be some people with schedules that are not flexible and will have to leave, but for the majority of people, we are telling them that they should plan to leave the day after. So maybe we could find a way to encourage them to come to this reception.
And I like the idea of dropping the word optional. Doesn't mean that if somebody's not available to come, that they can't leave, but I think it changes the mindset a little bit that this is really part of the program. And we want you to be there.
And actually what you're saying, Samira, is right. It's more sensible to go the next day for your flight.
So we will, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, remove the word optional and change the shuttle time. And then we probably want to, instead of 1900, say 2000 for dinner on your own. Or just remove a time for dinner on your own.
Right.
It might be helpful to specify if there's a program or not, because you may have people hanging around to see if there's a program. And so if there's no program, then if they're tired after 2 long days, they might feel better about leaving to go back to the hotel.
That could be another, something that we talk about in the presider's remarks, for that last session. Kind of setting up the rest of the evening, that dinner is on your own, and, making sure they understand that there isn't a program. This is just a final thank you, goodbye, networking opportunity, reception. And, we talked a little bit about this morning, is that if someone does have sort of an inflexible schedule, as Smyrna mentioned, they still do have that opportunity to ask permission to leave early. And so early, typically we would encourage people to stay through the end of the programming. But for example, if they needed to catch a flight to get home for a business obligation or family obligation, and they missed the reception, that's something we typically, as the moderator, you would approve. Just because it's not as crucial as the content. Certainly we want them to stay for it, but if they had a compelling reason, they could ask for an exception.
Although another insight is that my flight changed 3 times. So it shifts anyway. It's going up front or to the back. So even I'm hoping that in March it will be different, because and that's why I like the saying of you to skip it to the other day, because then you have more flexibility and they will be in the program than rather leave on, yeah. Because at Basel, I had a flight at 6:30 afternoon and they shifted till 10:55. So I was not at the closing because there was no other option. So.
That is a great reminder. We are still in a very uncertain flight environment. I think we have seen, lots of us have had similar experiences to Lee's. So that's something good to keep in mind as well. So we might
Well,
get some,
yeah,
but
it'll
ahead,
be an
Barb.
outlier probably that's leaving that night, given what we're saying in the call to meeting letter. So it'll probably be minimal people that would still request to leave on Wednesday night.
Okay, so that takes us through our program. And I just wanted to quickly revisit and just confirm that we, where we ended up with Yinka as the speaker. We wanted Yinka to do the teamwork and best practices, right? And we're gonna do John Hugo for your role. I know we had gone back and forth on those two speeches. Is that where we ended up?
Wherever she's speaking, I'm the presider. So in essence, I can't speak where she's speaking. So that's where the shift has happened. So that's fine.
Or he wouldn't, Yinka wouldn't be the presider during the same session that he's speaking. So we switched them. Yeah.
And I can
Thank you.
confirm I messaged with Jennifer Miska, and currently John's schedule is open for them that morning.
Not anymore.
Great, then I'm gonna look to my colleagues. Are there any other open items for the program? I think we have everything in pretty good shape. I think we've got a good list of speakers that we want to move forward with. I think we filled all the open spots. So just checking, so we're not missing anything. So good.
Nice work laying all this out. You made it very easy for us to make some final decisions. So thank you.
The credit goes to Madeline. She was the architect of the materials. Great. Well, then I think the next item on our agenda is,
Just to,
oh,
just as a close it up, Sarah will remember the conversation with John James.
Yeah, so we will follow the plan to, when we send the invitation to John Germ, to include the full plan for polio and to offer to have a conversation if he'd like to. And we will do that before any other invitations are issued for polio speaker in the general session.
great. So everyone is comfortable with the program. We have some plans of action. We've got a list of speakers that we'll invite. And so we'll prepare draft speaker invitations that will go out under Barry's signature. Trying to remember. Yep. And so we'll create a draft for him to review and approve. And then in the next couple of weeks, we'll start sending out invitations. So we definitely want people to make sure to mark their calendars. And we know, again, we know that that time of year is quite busy for a lot of Rotary leaders. So we'll work on those in the next couple of weeks. So then the next item on our agenda, we're a few minutes ahead of time, so we'll just get started with our next topic. And that is the facilitators and the facilitator orientation. So in your binder, there is a facilitators tab. So the first page under your facilitators tab is the actual list of facilitators. So this is just a reminder of who we invited. And so we have Lindsay from the Bahamas, and Lindsay is representing the EPNC program along with Neanne. And then we have Natty, who is representing the EMGAs. And so what we'll do is we'll go forward and assign each of the facilitators the sessions which they will lead. Most likely, they will lead sessions according to their area of expertise. So for example, we'll first slot in Lee's to lead EMGA sessions, but there are sessions that all of our facilitators will have to lead together. The other thing to think about is that if someone is ill or someone can't do a session, for example, we may ask someone else to step in. So There might be a polio related session that we need an EMGA facilitator to jump in because that facilitator wasn't able to lead the session. We're asking everybody to be prepared for everything, but generally you'll be assigned kind of based on your area of expertise. And then the next document we wanted to start reviewing is the facilitator's orientation. So this is our opportunity to work with all the facilitators, get some practice sessions in. So each facilitator will practice leading a session and then get feedback from our moderators and our staff. And then the other thing that we like to do during the orientation is make sure we see all the different sessions to make sure they work. You know, we're writing the sessions and you are all reviewing them, but until you kind of stand up and say it out loud and practice with an audience, sometimes there's a piece missing or something that needs clarified so that all the facilitators understand. So that's really another piece of the orientation. So all of the facilitators will arrive, including our moderators, a few days before the rest of the attendees. So you'll see here on this agenda, our very first event for the facilitators and moderators is Friday night, March 24th. So this is an opportunity for all the facilitators to come together. It's really casual. We give everybody their materials. So you get your leader's guide and your workbooks. And just make sure that if there's any questions before the orientation starts, we can kind of chat about it. So we usually have a couple of members of staff that attend, the facilitators and the moderators. And this is our first chance to kind of kick off the orientation. Then it officially starts the next morning, that's Saturday. So we have an opening session where we just talk a little bit about the purpose of the meeting. This is a great opportunity for us to bring in those other two facilitators that haven't been part of the planning process, make sure they understand what we're doing, what the goal of it is, any sort of themes that we want to make sure the facilitators know about to kind of emphasize throughout the event. And talking about the training itself, the training overview, some of the logistics, you know, the space that we're going to be in. And then you'll see that most of the agenda is dedicated to practice sessions.
Michelle,
Mhm.
when will the materials go out to them so that they can start preparing? And are we meeting with them at all virtually before we see each other in person?
Yep. Two great questions. The materials will go out to them, to the facilitators digitally, I think 2 weeks before, 2 or 3 weeks before the orientation. And then they'll receive their printed copy when they get on site. And then we are also planning a webinar so that we can, with the facilitators and our moderators, typically what we do is we try to give a quick overview of the curriculum, make sure everybody understands how to use the different pieces, right? Because there's the participant workbook, then there's the trainer's guide, how those fit together. Make sure all of the facilitators know which sessions they're assigned, right? How to read their agenda, things like that. We talk a little bit about the logistics, right? Because we'll have interpretation equipment, we'll have microphones likely. So introducing some of those things ahead of time. And then using the Saturday morning as an opportunity to revisit.
Thank you.
So on the agenda, you'll see that the practice sessions are 45 minutes. And then there is 10 minutes of discussion and feedback. So most of the sessions in the live event are 60 minutes. So what we'll be asking is that the facilitator who is practicing is condensing it down a little bit. Now, because there are fewer people in the room and none of us are real EMGAs, EPNCs for the purposes of this, you can cut down a little bit, right? You don't have to take as many answers and things like that. But we do want them to practice for 45 minutes to really get a good sense of the session. And it's a great opportunity, as I mentioned, for all of us to say, great, this makes a lot of sense, or seems like a couple of facilitators are struggling with this question. Let's talk a little bit about it more. So the staff that participate in the orientation, you are looking at many of them right around here. So we have representatives from learning and development. So Sarah and I are often the representatives to talk about the actual curriculum and the training. Christine's team has representatives that are involved in the orientation. And then typically we have representation from our philanthropy team based on their schedules, so that they can help us answer any content specific questions. So sometimes a facilitator gets tripped up a little bit about a technical Rotary Foundation aspect. And so having our members of philanthropy there to help us out to answer some of those specific questions can really help the facilitators move past that. So you'll see we have a box listed here as staff resource. So we typically have a designated person listed as the subject matter expert who can help us if any of those questions come up during the practice. So you'll see that Saturday day dedicated to practicing. We have lots of different practice sessions. We have a lunch together, and then a facilitator team dinner. So the facilitators and moderators, and usually one or two staff members have dinner together that night. And then you can see on day 2, Sunday, continue on with our practice sessions. And then after lunch, we have a closing session, review, debrief. If any of the facilitators or moderators have rehearsals scheduled based on who's giving speeches, we talk a little bit about that. Usually we use that Sunday afternoon for a lot of general session practice rehearsals. And then we are done for the orientation. And the next thing on their agenda is that welcome reception with the rest of the participants.
Question. Will all of the sessions take place on the first floor, or will some be on the third floor as far as orientation and during the live event?
The orientation will take place likely on the third floor. I think we'll use one of those conference rooms. We'll kind of just be there for both days. The actual event itself, I'm going to ask Madeline to talk about which spaces we're planning to use.
Yeah, we haven't finalized all of the spaces yet, but we are looking at rooms on the first floor and the third floor. Some of the Nate, of course, with asking our participants to bring their own devices, having the availability for them to use their own devices, but also have computers available. So we are defining those as we finalize the sessions.
One thing I wanted to point out, if you're looking at the bottom of page 2 of the orientation, the session, How to Get to 50 Million EPNC, you'll notice that this one is only a 30-minute practice with 10 minutes of discussion. That's because that's the session where we have John Germ speaking for about 20 minutes. So there's really only about 40 or so minutes of content. So condense that down a little bit for the person that will be practicing that session. Any questions on the orientation, facilitators? Great. Okay. So we are right about at our afternoon break. So we have 30 minutes. So if we want to come back at 3:15 Evanston time, and then we can continue on with our agenda.
At the onboarding calls at the end of August and beginning of September, EMGAs were notified of this event, of this training, and they were given the dates so they could put it in their calendars and kind of a save the date message we had for them. And then we had an onboarding calls follow-up message where we included a lot of resources and information for them as they're preparing for their role. And then we also had a whole section about the GPS and again, reminding them of the dates and letting them know who the participants will be of this training event. So they are aware that this is for EMGAs and EPNCs only. I will go over some of the communications. Currently, the first one that we send out is usually call to meeting letter, and that one goes out about 90 days prior to the event. We kind of had to work around holidays, so Christmas time, New Year's is coming up. A lot of people are taking time off, not checking their email as often, so we made sure that we send this out on December 14th, so that's our planned send date. This call to meeting letter will include a letter from John Hugo that will outline the training dates. We wanted to clarify this year that it is for incoming regional leaders only. Because of last year, we had an event that was for all as well. So we wanted to make sure that that is very clear at the beginning of the letter. We included some safety and health requirements. I know Sarah talked about that earlier today. We left it very vague because, like Sarah mentioned, the requirements keep changing for the events at ORC. So we told them that we will let them know about the requirements for their training closer to the event so they're better prepared. We talked about the on-site registration, welcome reception on the first day, and we wanted to point that out. So we encourage that they network and meet other incoming EMGAs and EPNCs. And then at the end, we remind them to read through all the pages of the attachment. There's about 3 pages of content that we send to them. And so in the sections as participant logistics, you can see that one section is registration and lodging. We tell them a little bit more about the hotel, and we ask them to fill out the registration survey, which is required for all the participants to tell us whether they will be coming in person and give us a little bit more information about themselves. So then we can prepare our participant list, and then they can then book their travel and get their trip ID. We talk about travel and what that process will look like for them, what dates they need to arrive. Like I said earlier, we encourage them to book their flights leaving Evanston the day after the event. So we give them some guidelines around that, and we ask them if they need any visas that they should contact us, and we give them visa letters. We provide a little bit about training logistics. So we just set expectations for long days. We tell them what time the sessions begin each day, what time they end, telling them about Wi-Fi and personal devices. We also do mention the guest policy that yes, they can bring guests, but the guests are not allowed to participate in the training sessions or reception or dinners that are for regional leaders only. The expenses, we remind them to make sure all their out-of-pocket expenses, they submit the expense report for within 60 days. And then at the end, we have email address for them to contact. So our entire core team working on this event, it has access to that email address. It's a regional leader training at rotary.org. So we wanted to make sure that all of us have access to that in case questions come in that are either about the program, the curriculum, the logistics. So whatever questions they have, they can contact us there. And then we talked about registration and travel reminders. We are exploring an option with trigger messages in Qualtrics, which is our survey provider. We wanted to make sure that once participants go to register and they complete their registration form online, they will automatically get an email in their inbox telling them what the next steps are. So we are exploring that option right now, and we want to make sure that that is embedded in the registration form so they have their next steps automatically sent to their inbox. We will send one registration reminder and one travel reminder. We've changed these dates, so the registration reminder will go out to all of those incoming EMJs and EPNCs who haven't registered at that point, and that will go out on January 23rd. And then we will send a travel reminder that will go out on February 6th to make sure that everybody books their travel through travel services. So anybody at that point who doesn't have their travel booked will be reminded to make sure they do that. We removed, you will see in the fourth column says upload COVID-19 vaccination proof. We will remove that requirement as per the guidelines that Sarah shared earlier today. So we will just be asking them to book their travel through travel services. And then closer to the event is when we send a message from Chris, and that message will be more of a motivational content that Chris will tell them about the importance of the Institute, their role, and what they will learn when they come here. We will also use that message as an opportunity to announce that more program information and details about the event will be shared in the following weeks. So we want to give them an idea of what this communications plan looks like. In the call to meeting letter, we do tell them you will receive more information in February and March. So the February message is Chris's message, and then we tell them in 2 weeks, we will be following up with more details. And then that's the March 6th message. It's a know before you go message that really has all of the logistical details that they will need to know prior to the event. So this is a couple of weeks before the event. We will give them a simplified training agenda. We will tell them how to prepare for training, so to bring their laptops for the report session. We want to make sure to clarify why laptops are needed versus tablets. We will encourage them to complete their pre-learning courses on the Learning Center. Here we will include the COVID-19 guidelines and whatever requirements of the building are at the time, and the requirements that this group decides that we will follow. They will be notified of that. Will include dress code, their meals, transport to and from the hotel, to and from the airport. And also, if there's any additional questions, we will remind them of the email address where they can contact us. And the 26th to 28th is the Global Philanthropy Seminar. Right after the seminar, we will send them a joint thank you message from Chris and our staff team, and we will link a post-event survey there. So we will thank them for their participation, and we will ask them to complete this post-event survey. And we will also tell them that their training materials, like their curriculum, their workbooks and leaders guides are available on their resources site. We have a resources site for regional leaders called Regional Leaders Library, where we post all of their materials. So we will remind them that they can find their curriculum posted there. We'll also include some suggestions to build knowledge post-training and also how to prepare for 1 July when they take their positions, and reminding them to make sure their expense reports are submitted on time. We have a newsletter for regional leaders that goes out every 2 months. So on April 1st, the April issue of the Regional Leader Insider will go out. And we want to make sure that we really promote this training. And we were at our last planning meeting in August exploring the possibility of president-elect and trustee chair-elect writing a motivational message about teamwork to kind of tie into this agenda that we just talked about, and making sure that they truly understand the importance of their work, and also encouraging current regional leaders to be their mentors and to support the incoming and find ways to share their expertise and experience with this incoming group. Also another reminder of their training materials, because we just want to make sure they know they have access to their materials digitally after the training. Any questions about this extensive communications plan? Yes, Yinka, go ahead.
Just a question on the what did we call it? The pre-learning, the online learning for them. Is that optional or mandatory?
It is encouraged. So I will go over that after this. We have outlined the courses. We asked them to complete these courses when they accept their appointment of the position, as a way to prepare for this role. And also throughout this incoming year, we do remind them to go into the Learning Center and complete these courses that will help them be better prepared for the training and also for their role come July 1. But there is no way for us to make it mandatory and required in that sense. We do encourage it in many different ways, and ultimately it is to help them be better prepared. I think there will be mention of these courses at the training as well, and in the follow-up message. So we really reiterate making sure they understand there are resources for them available in the Learning Center they can always go back to, but it is not mandatory like this training in Evanston is.
And Sarah can jump in here as well, but this is actually something that we were just talking about with our learning committee, the idea of required, encouraged, all the different words that we use for pre-learning or online courses, and that it is difficult to require something without consequences. And so we are actually, with the learning committee, we're exploring some different options in the next year or so of what can we do to address this? How do we know that there's such great content on the Learning Center that really would help a lot of these leadership positions. Sometimes they don't know about it, sometimes they forget about it. Is there an opportunity to, another way we can encourage them to take it if we don't have any concrete consequences, right? Because like at this point, we don't say, there's no buy-in from the organization to say, if you don't complete your learning plan, you don't get to be a coordinator, right? Or you don't get funding, things like that. And so trying to figure out ways, we've tried lots of things, and I'm sure Sarah and Christine can reiterate that. We've tried personal letters from the trustee chair-elect and the moderator. We've tried lots of different things. So, it's something that we definitely struggle with. Sarah, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, at this point, it would be too late to require it for this event, But if we wanted to explore some concepts next year, we could discuss those. But I think the timing is the issue. But it is follow up and reminders take time. That's why we've built them into the communications plan. But individual reminders require a lot of work. So we're looking at trying to do it earlier in the process than we've ever done it before. That was one of the changes we made this year. So we're looking to see what results we get from that.
I'll just share also, as Smyrna mentioned, we already mentioned the pre-learning courses in the follow-up message from the onboarding calls that we did with the incoming EMGAs back in September. So we mentioned them there. I know that they're also highlighted, Smyrna, you mentioned in the know before you go message that we're sending in early March. Maybe for this group to consider, we could also do a friendly reminder in the moderator's message planned for late February. And one other thing we have done in the past, it's very late in the game, but we have encouraged participants when they come to registration on Sunday afternoon to make sure they've completed their courses. That is really, really like the last chance before the content really starts. But we have done friendly reminders at registration as well. Not ideal though.
And as Sarah mentioned, Yinka, we can certainly revisit this next year when we're planning this event for, when you're the moderator, because we are very open to ideas. We just haven't had a ton of success so far with the regional leader groups.
Just to a general question, are we in a position that we're afraid that people may turn down a role because we have made completing a learning event mandatory? Is that a possibility?
I would ask Christine maybe to answer that one.
It's a great question. So we haven't gathered data specifically on that question that you raised, Yinka. However, I will share, and then I'll turn to Renee and Smyrna if they'd like to add in. I will share that when we have heard back from someone who has been invited to serve in one of the 4 positions that our team works with, when they've received that invitation and they have questions or they want to discuss the expectations of the position a little bit more, to the best of my knowledge, we have never heard that completing courses on the Learning Center have factored into that decision. It's typically other things related, to their capacity, professional, personal reasons, and so forth. I'll look to anyone to share a different perspective if they've heard something else, but to the best of my knowledge, we've never heard of that as a barrier to accepting the appointment.
And Chris, if you agree, I can add this pre-learning reminder in the moderator's message as a note to keep in mind.
That would be great.
One option is to call out in that moderator's message anyone who's completed their plan by a certain date. That could be an option too, from that positive reinforcement.
Great idea. Is there a way for you to actually know if someone's completed a course or not?
Yes. Maybe we can do a percentage. We see this 50% of you have completed this, and then encourage them to go in, log into the Learning Center if they haven't done it, and make sure they complete the courses prior to their arrival.
Great.
I'm just thinking that one of the things we are telling them is to encourage the district teams to do those learning events. So if they themselves don't do it, then we forget it. They are not likely to tell people to do it. But again, if the records, the data shows that over 90% of the people do it anyway, then maybe there's nothing to worry about. So that's the other side of it. But if we have a large percentage of people not doing it, then we need to think of a different way to reinforce it.
And we can certainly pull that data, one, for any messaging that goes out, but we can do an update on during our facilitator orientation. We can let you, Chris and Yinka, know how many of our participants have completed it. It's sort of an update to the message, the moderator message. We could even think about incorporating that into one of the presider remarks. You know, we're so excited that 95% of you completed your learning plan, or only 50% of you did. We'd really, you know, lead by example. You know, there could be some messaging there as well.
It's a great idea. And this is a very good segue into our next topic, which is a few pages back of this section, and it is their learning plans. So new this year, we have on the Learning Center, Yinka, you might know as a director, there are courses for, there's a catalog of courses for directors specifically, and only directors, when they log into the Learning Center, can see that tile on the homepage. So we created something like that for regional leaders this year. So this is very new. Once they log into their account in the Learning Center, they will see a catalog of courses, say regional leader courses. And so that's another way of trying to encourage them, instead of sending them links to separate courses or them trying to search for the courses in the Learning Center. Now they're all combined in one place. And so once they open the Learning Center, it's right on the homepage. Once they click on that catalog, there will be courses, learning plans, one for all regional leaders, which is called Regional Leader Basics. So we are encouraging all of them to complete that. And then there will be 5 additional learning plans for each of the roles. So now for this group, the EMGAs and EPNCs, there are 2 learning plans called Endowment Major Gifts Advisor Intermediate and PolioNow Coordinator Intermediate. So those are more role-specific courses that we're asking them to complete, in addition to the basic courses that all regional leaders really need to complete in order to be the most successful they can be in their role. I will not go through all of the courses right now, but they are here for your reference. And we are still looking into ways to make their experience with learning about their role a little bit more interactive. And right now they have their Regional Leaders Manual, which is a PDF document. So we are also working with our learning and development team and exploring ways to put that on the Learning Center as well, and make it a more interactive portion of their training, and just as a way to encourage them to really go through all of those sections and learn about their role in a more interesting way than just reading text on a page. So we are still in very early stages of that. So I will, if we do have an announcement, I would be happy to make that announcement at the seminar. But as of right now, it is in very early stages. I just wanted to mention that to this group. There are new things we're trying, and if you have any suggestions, we would love to try new things. And I will hand it over to Renee to cover the year-round engagement and learning opportunities that our team prepares.
Great. Thank you, Smyrna. My apologies for my background. I am currently picking up one and about to get another one. So the distance learning for the EMGAs and EPNCs is really based on what they need for their role. Hey, Owen, shh, real quick. And what we are doing this year for our EMGAs in particular is we started back in September with their onboarding call. So focusing just on those incoming EMGAs. And then, hey, Owen. Shh. Then in the first week of October, so just recently, we did a distance learning experience for all of our regional leaders and their assistants regarding travel and expenses. So we're teaching them how to use Rotary's travel services forms and go through the website in that way, teaching them how to submit expense reports so that they know how to do some of those more administrative things for their roles. Obviously, we're going to bring all of our incoming EMGAs and EPNCs to this training as part of a learning experience, but it doesn't stop there. We continue for the EMGAs in particular with a focused conference call, interactive experience, most likely in April, maybe early May, depending on the timing. That's about donor events and recognition. Specifically talking about the EMGA role with donor recognition at the GETs, GNTs, and institutes. So that's one of the areas that we have found has been necessary for the EMGAs, that they need a little extra support on that. Smyrna mentioned that there is a document in your binders or a link that I know has been put into our chat here about year-round engagement. I'm not going to go into detail on that because you can see that we are looking for every opportunity possible to keep our volunteers engaged and keep them learning about their role. So that is where we are right now with that. And I would like to just add that when we hear from our volunteers that they need more information or aren't sure how to do a specific thing in their role, Lindsay Clark, the EMGA specialist, and I, along with Claire, along with Dory and David's team, we find a way to best meet that need for the volunteers. So by no way has what I just shared with you been like the end of the sentence. There is still much more to come with that, and it's based on what we hear once we are able to see our volunteers in the field and hear more from them. Any questions, thoughts, or concerns?
And I just wanted to add to what Renee was talking about, that not only do we try to offer learning opportunities throughout their incoming year, but also networking opportunities. So as you will see in May, we will host an in-person networking event in Melbourne at the convention. This is something that we did last year as well in Houston. So we try to bring them together at an event that they might already be at. And also we do host, for those who did not travel in Houston and who will not travel to Melbourne, we will hold a year-end virtual event for all regional leaders. So that will include the incoming and those currently serving. So we try to create these opportunities for connection and networking beyond just the webinars and the learning opportunities that our team creates. And I know, Yinka, you had a question earlier, so I do want to circle back to that.
My question was on what we call the regional leader basics for all regional leaders. I'm just thinking, shouldn't we have that learning one on change management included in this? I mean, on the learning center, there's that one on change management.
The change management course?
Yes, change management course. I thought that should be included here.
We can build these plans however we want to. So we have this flexibility to add courses that we think are really necessary for their role. So I'll make a note of that one. And if there's any other ones, we really want to make sure we give them a good basic knowledge of everything they need to know before they dig deeper into the details of their specific roles. And we found that these 6 courses cover that basic understanding of Rotary and being a Rotary leader in general, but we can definitely add change management because we do have that in the curriculum. So it makes sense that they have that as a refresher or as a reminder to complete in the Learning Center.
We are in the process of updating that course. So by next year, we'll have an updated version of that course.
I also just wanted to turn to the room. I know that several of you, including Chris and Lise, have had the opportunity to join either virtually or in person some of the different networking events that Smyrna and Renee just mentioned, some of the different learning opportunities. So if there's anything anyone else in the room would like to share sort of from the participant or observer experience about any of these activities, please feel free.
Well, I did all the trainings virtually. So this is the first time an in-person training. What I liked in the virtual, that there was time to network outside the program. So that is something, and I think we'll build it in just now, but it would be very nice to see. And adding to that is that there were some workshops going deeper in what I mentioned earlier in funding and the ways and so on. So that was more one-to-one. So that would be great, actually.
Well, I think some of the virtual social activities that we did, I think people really appreciated. I know not everybody attended them, but you know, they were the expectation, I think from our perspective, was to be very light and fun. We had some icebreaker kind of things. We had some trivia question kind of things, and it just got people sort of more relaxed and created a comfortable atmosphere, if you will, for folks. So I thought those were great.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments on anything that we heard from Smyrna or Renee or Christine related to our communications, year-round learning and engagement opportunities, or any of the pre-learning? Everybody feels comfortable? Great. Yes, we do like to talk about the year-round engagement and the pre-learning. You know, particularly with this group, I know we talked about it earlier with Dory and David as well, that this 2.5 day, 2.25 day event is not their only learning opportunity, right? We understand that it's a lot to fit in, all of the things that they have to do, all of the information about our Rotary Foundation is a lot to squeeze into 2 days. So we really want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with a year-round learning plan, that we know we cannot fit everything into those couple of days. And so we have different touch points throughout the year or years, depending on how long someone is in these roles, to continue their learning. Great. Well, we are wrapping up a little bit early for today. So I'm gonna turn to my colleagues and see if there are any questions, anything outstanding, any follow-up items. I know we talked a little bit before about one of our follow-up items being connecting with John Germ after our meeting concludes. So we have that on our list. Any other follow-up items that we took note of for today?
One quick note, Yinka, we know you had asked earlier about the number of incoming EMGAs and EPNCs who have served as district trainer. Renee pulled those numbers quickly, and we have 2 of the incoming EMGAs who have served as district trainer. Claire, how about EPNCs?
Seven out of the 15 EPNCs have served as district trainer.
That's a good number. Yeah, I'm surprised. Mhm.
I'm jealous. I said I was jealous.
Great. So thank you, Christine, Renee, and Claire for following up on that item. Were there any other items that we had made a note to follow up on from today? I think we're good. Great. All right, well then, that wraps up, our agenda for today. We do have dinner scheduled at Prairie Moon tonight. You can see on the agenda the address. So it's just a couple blocks away from One Rotary Center. And Dory and I will be joining the group for dinner tonight. And that starts at.
I just
note.
thought of one other question I
Mhm.
have, Michelle. So I know we're waiting to send, and the speaker invitations will come from Barry. But we're gonna wait till the John Germ thing is figured out, right? Before any of the other speaking invitations are sent out, is that? No.
Just
just
that
the-
one on.
Oh, just
on
that one.
poll.
Okay, so how soon will those go out, just in case someone is unavailable, so that we have time to figure out a backup plan?
Yeah, we are planning to send them out in the next couple of weeks, so definitely before the end of November. So we'll just take a little bit of time to connect with Barry, and then get all of those sorted out. But yeah, in the next, before the end of the month is our goal to have them all out.
The, the other logistic question for me is, we have 4 facilitators. I mean, the 2 lead and the 2 facilitators. And in the program, we have maximum of 4 breakouts, as it were. So when you said, assuming a facilitator is unable for any reason, I mean, people do develop sore throat or something, we've seen it many times. If that were to happen, what would you do with the 4? Assuming one person was not available.
So good news is our backup facilitators are Chris and Yinka. That is the secret role of the moderator and assistant moderator, is that if we do have something like that come up, hopefully we will not. But we do have the benefit of both of you being very familiar with the curriculum. You'll have gone through the facilitator orientation with the trainers. So we would come to the 2 of you next if something like that happened.
Great question.
It wouldn't be a Rotary event without a secret role, right? Great. Anything else for today? All right. Well, I want to thank our virtual colleagues for attending, and I'll turn it over to Chris if you want anything to close us out for today.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody, all of our amazing Rotary staff. Leanne's gone, but Lise and Yinka. We covered a lot of material today, but all the work you guys did to prepare for these 2 days is just amazing. So thank you very much. I think we're set up in good shape to ready to go.
Great. So some of you, we will see you at dinner tonight. And then everyone else, we are back in this room at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. David. You can leave your binders, but nothing electronic equipment wise stays in the room. Yeah.
I left some out of my, and I left my phone.
Oh. Good, good, good. All right, well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Enjoy your evenings.